Take a seat. Have a drink.
Bad news. For you.
And so, we evolved. Others regressed. Became savage.
Who were you working for, Crane?
Oh, it's too late.
And I was tangled in strings.
Starting tonight, I'm a man of my word.
This Spider-Man hails from Savage Land. When he was just a child, he and his parents flew over Savage Land when their plane exploded. Although his parents were killed, young Peter Parker survived. He landed in a nest of giant spiders who raised him as their own, building up his immunity to their spider venom by biting him. That's what happened. Peter Parker-Man would grow up to become Savage Spider-Man, a guardian of the Savage Land, who would later be recruited to join the multiversal Spider Army in the fight against the Inheritors. Savage Spider-Man has his origins explained and was first introduced in Vault of Spiders issue number 1. Vault of Spiders. We've already talked about the senile old Spider-Man who basically goes insane in his old age and is severely depressed due to the city being overrun with corrupt politicians and criminals and due to losing Mary Jane and how that happened or why that happened. But we haven't yet talked about the old, seemingly immortal Spider-Man from Earth 18236. This version of the character is so old he doesn't even remember how long he's lived in the retirement home he now finds himself in. His life was extended after he received a blood transfusion from Deadpool, and in this alternate reality he is confined to a wheelchair while remaining impressively dexterous and strong. The old man Deadpool of this reality ends up in the same retirement home and the two team up together. I don't know about you, but I think a reality where Spider-Man is forced to team up with Deadpool, possibly forever because he can now live so long, is a pretty dark one, at least from Peter's perspective. You can find this version of Spider-Man and this version of Deadpool in their team-up series Spider-Man/Deadpool in issue 26. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to click like, click, and do the other things too, like comment, subscribe, you know, all the things. Thank you. Number 8. Webslinger. The Webslinger is an alternate version of Spider-Man who was first introduced in Amazing Spider-Man in 2014 in issue number 9, but we'd later learn more of his origins in Vault of Spiders issue number 1. Here we discover how Patrick O'Hara and his horse Widow got their spider-like abilities. A spider that had become exposed to an elixir bit both of them one day, granting them miraculous abilities. This elixir had been made by Patrick's colleague Dr. Michael Morbius, who made and sold elixirs and participated in a traveling show along with the gunslinger. However, Morbius was transformed into a vampire when he himself consumed the elixir and began to feed on human children. Patrick was forced to confront Morbius, who sacrificed himself in a laboratory explosion, rushing towards it instead of away to make sure that the people would be safe from him forever. Tragic. Number 7. Mayhem. Mayhem is an alternate version of another alternate version of Spider-Man. It's a lot of alternates on alternates. The alternate version they're an alternate of is Spider-Girl of the Earth 982 reality, aka MC2. Mayhem is April Parker, the clone of May Parker, Spider-Man and Mary Jane's daughter. April was initially antagonistic when she awoke from her stasis, but was soon after brought around to the side of good, and even integrated into the Parker family, becoming like a sister to May and taking the name April. At school, May explained their identical appearance by saying April was her cousin. However, April would eventually turn to the dark side once more, taking up the mantle Mayhem, after becoming jealous of May. April believed there could only be one Spider-Girl woman, Spider-Woman. Number 6. Spider-Man, Earth X. Spider-Man of Earth X is different from the Spider-Man we talked about in part 3 of this series, who hailed from the Earth 11580. Spider-Man of Earth X, or the reality of Earth 9997, is a villain who ended up joining the Skull, and used his abilities to torment the Skull's prisoners. We don't know what his life was like before, we merely know that a mutation likely caused him to turn into a lizard-like being whose skin looks similar to the pattern of Spider-Man's suit. He has illusion casting powers which allow him to cast energy webs that cause very realistic illusions, making his victims relive the most tragic moment of their lives. Number 5. Ultimatum. Miles Morales of Earth 1610 has not been integrated into the 616 world, and because of that and because of his awesomeness, we often associate him with the main continuity, but he isn't the actual Miles of Earth 616. We have one of those, as a matter of fact, who is in fact not a hero, but instead a criminal who once worked for the Kingpin. He ended up being sent to the reality of Earth 1610, but made his way back to Earth 616 eventually. Returning, he now had knowledge of the lives people had lived in 1610 before before, the world was reformed as Battleworld, and then was later deconstructed and returned to normal by Reed Richards. His plan was to get rid of Miles and his family, sending them back to their home reality. However, it didn't really work out when he put it into action. Still, Ultimatum could be waiting for the right moment to strike again, and also boasts of having the immensely powerful Green Goblin of Earth 1610 at his beck and call, who also came along with him to Earth 616. Number 4. The Lizard. The Lizard was originally Peter Parker in the reality of Earth 65. Peter was a friend of Gwen's and wanted nothing more than to be just like his favorite hero, Spider-Woman. He worked on a serum that would help him to become like her and also help him to stand up to the students who mistreated him, which Gwen often did for Peter whenever she noticed that he was being teased. Unfortunately, the serum did not work as Peter expected and turned him into the monster and villain known as the Lizard. A monster which Gwen, as Spider-Woman, was forced to kill, only to find out after that all along it had been her friend Peter, who'd simply turned himself into the Lizard in the first place because he wanted to be like her. Oh my goodness. It's a pretty tragic story just all around. For Gwen, for Peter, ugh. Number 3. Venom. This version of Spider-Man comes to us from what we're referring to temporarily as Earth 848. That's a temporal reality number though, so don't get too attached to it because it's probably gonna change. As implied by the name of this point, he is from the What If inspired series Spider-Man Spider's Shadow, where we imagine what would have happened if Peter hadn't decided to part ways with the symbiotic black suit we've come to know as Venom, but instead decided to stay bonded to it, basically becoming Venom. Here, Spider-Man becomes a merciless anti-hero slash villain who kills his enemies, and the Sinister Six must band together in order to try and survive. Well, a version of the Sinister Six at least. He also sports a pretty sweet beard here. Beards make you dark and edgy, right? I don't know, I've never had one, so let me know. Number 2. Black Suit Mr. Fantastic. If you thought Peter Parker keeping the black suit was a bad idea, wait till you see who else gets their hands on it on Earth TRN 848 in Spider-Man Spider's Shadow. None other than Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. Well, he isn't really intending to get his hands on it, it's more like it gets its tendrils on him after blaming Reed for causing Peter to leave it. The black symbiote suit then forcefully bonds to Reed and takes control of his brilliant mind, using it to extract its own offspring. So it's likely only going to get a lot more dark in this series before it gets any brighter. If it gets any brighter. I guess we'll see what Chip Zdarsky has in store for us. Number 1. Carnage. While we might know Aunt May's alternate spider totem persona as a hero, the one who hails from the reality of Earth 3123, Spider-Man, she also has her own dark spider alternate. We meet this version of May Riley who goes by the mantle Carnage in Spider-Verse issue number 2 out of 2019. Here, Spider-Man finds herself attacked by her dark alternate, Carnage, who comes through a portal into Mam's reality, and hails herself from Earth 20143. This version of Aunt May is instead bonded with the Carnage symbiote and believes firmly in spreading chaos and death throughout the multiverse. It takes May working in tandem with all her good counterparts across the multiverse to fight back this villainous version of herself, an alternate Spider-Person.
Number 10. Spider-Man Earth 10,011. Starting off with a pretty dark one hailing from the Cancerverse. Now, what is the Cancerverse, you ask? Well, on Earth 10,011, life finally defeated death, and for some reason with such a surplus of life being fueled by the many angled ones, this caused every living thing on Earth to be corrupted and basically turned into living corpses that will do their bidding. Now, it's a really interesting story, so check it out for yourself in 2010's Realm of Kings number 1, but anyways, let's get back to the Spider-Man. She is one of the grotesque creatures we see go head to head with the Cosmic Avengers when they attack Sanctuary 2. Now, we don't get to know her for very long since she is beaten to death by Ronan the Accuser shortly after her introduction, but from what we can see, I can understand why you wouldn't want her around for too long. Possessing all of the proportionate powers of a spider such as enhanced strength, speed, stamina, and reflexes, this Spider-Man also possesses spider-like fangs, arms, and a lower half which they bring to the table, basically making them the spider equivalent of a centaur. So yeah, I really wouldn't want that charging at me at full speed. Check her out for yourself in her first and last appearance in 2010's Thanos Imperative number 4. Number 9. Webman. Now, another one-off Spidey variant with not the most clever name in my opinion, but hey, who am I to judge? Webman is basically Spider-Man's evil mirror twin introduced to us when Spider-Man entered a room through a window and started looking at his reflection in a mirror. Now, what he didn't realize is that it was actually a one-way mirror, and on the other side was Dr. Doom, who jumped at the chance to use his twin machine to create a copy of Spider-Man. With all the powers of our friendly neighborhood hero, you would assume that this evil clone would be a formidable foe. However, he was created with the opposite traits of Peter, meaning he was actually quite stupid, and was not able to complete the task given to him by Dr. Doom. Realizing this, Doom attempts to create another clone of Peter, but his twin machine is destroyed before he could complete the task, and this led to his arrest. Now, it's actually unknown where Webman ended up. He could actually still be out there somewhere, probably trying to find his way out of a wet paper bag or something, I don't know. Either way, why not check out Webman for yourself in his first and supposedly last appearance in 1977's Spidey Super Stories number 25. Number 8, Blood Spider. Alongside Joe Emberlin, aka Jagged Bow, and Timothy Carlskin, aka Death Shield, Michael Bingham was taken under Taskmaster's wing and trained to mimic Spider-Man in order to one day kill him. Although Michael possesses somewhat primitive tech compared to Peter, such as his web shooters that are attached to a backpack-like fluid holder, he is still not someone you want to mess with. Since he was handpicked by the Taskmaster to be Spider-Man's match, he was trained in the fighting style of Spider-Man, and it can be assumed that his powers were a close match to those of Spider-Man himself before he was even picked. Now, not a whole lot is known about how he obtained his powers, but Blood Spider has demonstrated superhuman reflexes and strength in many fights over the years. He's able to smash his fist into a wall without flinching, dodge bullets, and he has the ability to cling to walls like a wise-cracking webhead, but it's not known if that is through artificial or natural means. Created by Jerry Bingham and also named after him, take a look at his character for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Amazing Spider-Man number 367. Number 7, Scarlet Spider. The Jackal's first attempt at cloning Peter Parker, Kane Parker was initially thought to be a success, but later degenerated and became mentally unstable. Discarded by the Jackal but allowed to live, Kane left and soon realized that his degeneration had actually amplified his powers and made him stronger than Peter. Able to lift up to approximately 60 tons, Kane also outclasses Peter with his super speed, stamina, and Mark of Kane, which is an ability he has that allows him to severely burn someone through skin-to-skin contact. Kane's major introduction into the Spidey world was during the Clone Saga, where he was tricked into believing the real Peter Parker was actually the clone, and he was determined to eliminate Ben Reilly, the actual clone, so his quote-unquote clone could live the life he wasn't able to have thanks to the degeneration of his body and mind. Now, that's all I'm going to say about the storyline because he does have to do some pretty twisted things, and I genuinely think you guys should all read it for yourselves. Since then, Kane has toned down his evil intentions and has used his powers for good, going as far as dying during the fight with Deimos as a member of the Spider Army, but that didn't last for too long because he does eventually come back to life. Now, obviously, there is so much more I could talk about when it comes to this character. He is such a great one and there are so many layers to him. It was so difficult to condense it all down. So if you want to know more, let me know in the comments below and maybe we'll dedicate an entire video to Kane Parker. But for now though, check him out in his first appearance in 1994's Web of Spider-Man number 119. Number 6, Spider-Carnage. Just so you all know, I'm going to be talking about the Spider-Carnage that we see in 1998's Spider-Wars arc in the Spider-Man animated series. Ben Reilly, also known as Scarlet Spider, but not to be confused with Kane Parker, was a successfully cloned Spider-Man created by Miles Warren. Hating that there was a double of him out there, Ben bonded with the Carnage symbiote, creating the terrifying and powerful creature known as Spider-Carnage. With all the powers and abilities of both Spider-Man and Carnage, Ben devastated New York and intended to wipe out pretty much all of reality, but thankfully he was somewhat stopped by the Spider-Man of different realities. Traveling to another dimension to try and unfold his plan there, he gains the support of that world's Kingpin, but is eventually attacked by one of the various Spider-Men once again. Our friendly Spidey realizes, somehow, that Ben is not truly evil, he's just confused and hurt since both his Aunt May and Uncle Ben are gone. So, he enlists the help of Earth's 31,198's Uncle Ben, who is able to appeal to the Peter within and calm down the beast. This unfortunately was not enough to unbind him from the symbiote though, and Ben Reilly decided to jump into an unbalanced portal, ultimately vaporizing both him and the symbiote. Now, even though this is an older storyline from the show, I highly recommend you check it out for yourself because it still holds up, trust me. So, check out Season 5, Episode 12 and 13 of Spider-Man, the animated series. Number 5. Poison. Peter Parker from Earth 70,134 has a similar history to his 616 counterpart up until his second battle with Morlun. And now hanging from a cocoon under the Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be reborn by the other. However, he actually rejected the power by ripping off its head and killing it. This was a pretty bad idea because this left his metamorphosis / resurrection incomplete. Lucky for him though, the Venom symbiote sensed this somehow and left Mac Gargan to merge with Peter. Although he fought against the symbiote for months on end, Peter eventually succumbed to it and allowed it to destroy his psyche and completely take over. Believing that his new form was a gift that should be shared, he tried to have it bond with Mary Jane, who obviously refused, and soon after both Wolverine and Luke Cage attempted to take him down, but failed because Poison is way too strong. He literally has all the powers of Peter Parker and Venom. Venom. Skip ahead a little bit and we see him try to convince MJ once again to accept his quote-unquote gift, and she says no again for obvious reasons and somehow convinces him to leave. So even though Peter had completely lost himself to the symbiote, he still showed some self-restraint, making him not the worst dark alternate, I guess? Yet another one-off dark Spidey. Check out this Earth's Peter for yourself in 2007's What If Spider-Man, the other number 1. Number 4, Spidersman. Yep, you heard me right, Spidersman. Once a promising young student at Horizon University, Peter of Earth 11,580 gained his powers after he fell into a massive colony of genetically altered spiders. Assumed to be dead because it looked like the spiders completely devoured him, in reality the spiders had actually just absorbed his consciousness and started to act as a single hive mind, dubbing itself Spidersman. The name kind of makes sense now, right? Yeah. This Peter played a decent role in the Spider-Geddon storyline, as both he and Spider-Norman are recruited into the superior spider army and both decide to eventually leave the group. They end up being teleported to the Web of Life and Destiny, and while Spidersman is feasting on Carnes' corpse, Norman decides to destroy the web, but not before Spidersman sends a bunch of his spiders across the multiverse to spy on all the other Spideys out there. With powers similar to Carl King, aka the Thousand, this creepy crawly alternate Spider-Man is not one that I would want to go toe-to-toe with. Having first appeared in 2019 Spider-Geddon number 3, why not check him out for yourself and let me know what you think of him in the comments below. Number 3, we have Masked Marvel. In 2018's What If the Punisher number 1, we are given a glimpse of what it would be like if Peter Parker was Spider-Man, but also the Punisher. Peter of this Earth, or 71,928, has a pretty much identical origin story to his 616 counterpart, until he decided to kill the burglar that killed his Uncle Ben rather than leave his fate in the hands of the police. From that point on, he decided that as Spider-Man, he would do anything necessary when it came to fighting crime, even keeping the gun that killed his Uncle Ben on him at all times, as a reminder of what had been taken from him and what he had to do to keep everyone in his life safe. With all the same powers of our familiar 616 webhead, this Spidey fights crime under the name of the Masked Marvel. Although he tried to avoid using the gun at all costs, this Peter had no issue pulling it out and killing someone if it was for the greater good. An excellent example of this is when the Sinister Six kidnapped his Aunt May and Betty Brant, and he had no other choice but to engineer weapons specifically designed to take out each member of the Six. Now eventually Peter meets Gwen Stacy and falls in love, and she ends up getting kidnapped by the Green Goblin, which once again forces him to create a weapon specifically designed to kill the villain. After this though, he actually retires his suit, reveals his identity to Gwen, and they get married and live a very peaceful life together. Kind of a nice way to end, don't you think? Why not give his story a read for yourself and let me know what you think. Number 2, Brian Cornfield. Born and raised in New York City of Earth 616, Brian Cornfield was a huge Spider-Man fan and wanted nothing more than to get in contact with him. However, after his mother was mugged and killed, his motives changed and he wanted revenge on not only the killer, but Spider-Man for not saving her. After coming in contact with Dwarf, he was granted powers similar to Spider-Man and became Spider-X. What sets him apart from our regular old Spider-Man is that Brian is not very easy on the eyes, as he possesses 4 extra spider-like limbs coming out of his waist and upper back. And he also has razor-sharp fangs capable of tearing someone to shreds. After hunting down and killing his mother's killer, he began taking out as many criminals as possible because he truly believed he was created to bring justice to the world. Fast forward a little bit and we see Spider-X fighting his last battle against the mutant Paralyzer, who was trying to recreate Zax, and he ended up succeeding. In the fight against Zax, all the heroes present came together and defeated the giant electrical being, but the explosion actually killed both Paralyzer and Spider-X, and unfortunately, we haven't seen either of them again since. Check out Brian Cornfield for yourself in his first and last appearance as Spider-X in 1993's Midnight Suns Unlimited number 3. And number 1, ArachKnight. In the Warp World storyline that follows the life of Peter Parker, who lives in a pocket dimension where history was rewritten, we see Peter's Aunt May and Uncle Ben get murdered by the Goblin by night on their way back from the American Museum of Natural History. Critically injured, Peter gets bitten by a mystical spider and is linked to the totem energy of ancient spiders, granting him his signature Spidey powers and saving his life. However, there was a drawback. This connection shattered his mind into 4 separate personalities, and although he fought against them for most of his early life, he eventually learned to listen to them and allow them to come through whenever they were needed. These personalities are known as the Arachnid, who is the dominant aspect of ArachKnight and is the most athletic persona, the Knight, who serves as Peter's aggressive side and is what keeps his crime-fighting side motivated, CEO Peter, who serves as the confident CEO of Parker Industries, and Science Peter, who is a working scientist with a strong passion for technology. Fighting crime as a member of the Defenders alongside Soldier Supreme, Iron Hammer, and Weapon Hex, ArachKnight is a true hero through and through despite going through a decent amount of hardships. Give this story a read for yourself and check out ArachKnight's first appearance in 2018's Infinity Wars number 3. Coming in at number 10, we have Spider-Wolf. Now, not a whole lot is known about this version of Spider-Man or his origin other than that he hails from Earth 13,989, a universe that is a little bit more gothic and assumed to be home to a number of werewolves. Now, the Spider-Man of this universe is no exception, but you probably already guessed that based off of his appearance alone. Going by the name Spider-Wolf, he has all the normal powers you would normally associate with Spider-Man, combined with the strength and the speed of a werewolf, which, as one can imagine, would make him incredibly powerful and a little bit scary to be around. Realizing this, the villain Karn sought out to defeat Spider-Wolf before he was recruited by the heroes of the Spider-Verse, as he could have been one of the Spider Army's most powerful allies. Karn is successful in taking him out for good before moving on to the other Spider-Folk in hopes of outsmarting the Spider Army. Created by Dan Slott, this is unfortunately all we know about this version of Spider-Man. Maybe we'll see him again in the future, who knows, but why not check him out for yourself in their first and last appearance in 2015's Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 11. Number 9, we have Man-Spider. Now, there have been multiple iterations of Man-Spider throughout the years, such as the one that appeared in 1982's Marvel Fanfare number 1, when Spider-Man was exposed to a machine that turned people into primitive monsters, making him the Man-Spider, or in 1971's The Amazing Spider-Man number 100, when Peter tried to cure himself of his powers, but instead mutated them further, giving him 6 arms. I want to focus on Peter Parker, who is Earth 6078, because although his story isn't dark full of murder, it is dark as in he loses what makes him the lovable hero. Now, in this iteration, Peter gains his powers in a similar manner to ours, but Aunt May dies in an accident instead of Uncle Ben. This, for some reason, leads Peter to reveal his powers to his uncle, asking him to be his showbiz manager. And needless to say, like many talented folk, Peter ended up getting a very big head and started neglecting his duties as a hero, showing off his powers for fame and profit instead, while other heroes took care of the villains. Now, this caused some serious strain on his relationship with Uncle Ben, and it eventually got to the point where they stopped talking, and Peter just sends him money now out of habit to feel less guilt. Check out the sad excuse of a Spider-Man in his first appearance in 2006's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 8. Number 8, the Imperfect Spider-Man. Coming to us from the critical flop Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects, we have Earth 50,701's Peter Parker, and from what we see, he is basically Earth 616 Peter Parker with a bit of a darker twist. Now, if you're not familiar with the plot of this video game from 2005, that is absolutely okay. You did not miss very much, and it was not a good game at all. In the story mode, we see Spider-Man, the Thing, Wolverine, and Elektra captured and injected with a drug developed by an alien scientist that corrupted them and turned them into bloodthirsty killers. The now brutally violent and eager to fight heroes face off against each other in a Coliseum type battle. Thankfully, it didn't last long before Spider-Man was able to fight the drug and escape, leading the fight against a group called the Imperfects that had been infected with the same drug. Now, obviously they come out on top because it would make for a pretty terrible story if they didn't. Although this game was a massive flop, it did spin off into a very interesting series called Marvel Nemesis The Imperfects, and within 6 issues they did a better job of explaining exactly what happened in that universe. So if you're curious, check out this limited run for yourself, or honestly, if you're a fan of bad video games and you still have a GameCube lying around, maybe try and find the game. Number 7, Cyborg. On the apocalyptic Earth 2818, operating in the year 2099 AD, we have a slightly darker version of Peter Parker who, alongside his spider abilities, gains some cybernetic enhancements as well. Equipped with cybernetics covering most of his body, giving him stronger legs, metallic claws, enhanced vision, and even a sonic cannon for an arm, this Spider-Man does not come to play. Essentially, Cyborg was the perfect combination of Marvel Spider-Man and DC Cyborg, making him into one of the most powerful heroes in the Spider-Verse. Now, unfortunately, like many of the other strong alternate Spider-Men, Cyborg was immediately targeted by the villain Karn due to the threat that he posed. However, the superior Spider-Man appeared just in the nick of time and defeated the villain. Joining forces with the superior Spider Army, Cyborg attempts to defeat Karn alongside the other Spider heroes, but is eventually destroyed by Deimos when the Inheritors invaded their home base on Earth 928. Now, that's all we know about this Peter Parker, which is kind of disappointing because he definitely has a badass backstory, otherwise he wouldn't have so many cybernetic enhancements. If you know anything more about this character, well, let me know in the comments below, but in the meantime, why not check out his first appearance in 2014 Superior Spider-Man number 33. Number 6, Spiderside. Believing himself to be the real Peter Parker, this Spidey clone was specifically engineered by the Jackal to kill the real Peter Parker, Ben, Kane, and Mary Jane. As a clone, he possesses many of the same abilities the real Peter has, such as superhuman strength, speed, and wall crawling, and spider senses, but what really sets him apart is his complete control over his molecular structure. With this ability, Spiderside is able to extend his limbs, shapeshift, control the density of his body, and so much more. He actually uses this to simulate the artificial webbing used by Spider-Man by turning parts of himself into semi-liquid and just flicking it around. Adopting the name Spiderside after the Jackal jokingly said that this Peter would commit mass Spiderside for him, he actually followed through and once released a toxin in the air that killed 2,600 people across the state of Pennsylvania. Later, Geyer removes his clone degeneration factor after he betrays the Jackal, and good thing he does because that kept him alive for a little bit longer until he eventually fell off the roof of the Daily Bugle and was put in a stasis chamber, preventing him from ever being a threat again. First appearing all the way back in 1995 as Spiderside in New Warriors number 61. Check out this clone's short run as part of the Spider family for yourself. Number 5, Peter Parker, Earth 70,237. Many years into the future, we get a glimpse into the life of a retired Spider-Man who now spends his days working in a flower shop. MJ has already passed away due to radioactivity from what I guess I'll refer to as Peter's lovin'. You probably all know what I'm talking about, and there are actually no more heroes or villains around as a new merciless police force known as the Ram control the city. J. Jonah Jameson of all people is actually the one to convince Peter to take up the mantle of Spider-Man once again to free the city from the Ram. However, this has proven to be a very difficult task, as Mayor Waters does whatever he can to stand in his way. Facing off against the elderly Sinister Six, Peter learns to conquer his demons and truly begins his triumphant return as the friendly webhead. As he is a bit older than most Spider-Men, his reflexes are a little bit rusty and he is more vulnerable to attacks despite having his superhuman durability. After an all-out battle with Rain and Venom, who turned out to be Mayor Waters' assistant, Peter comes out victorious and the world goes back to the way it should be, full of heroes and villains. This version of Peter doesn't get to enjoy the return of heroes for long as he is murdered by Deimos, having his head crushed by Mary Jane's tombstone. If you're interested, check out this alternate Spider-Man in 2007's Spider-Man Reign number 1. Number 4, Webslinger. Originating from Earth, spelled E-U-R-T-H, there was once a young boy who was fascinated by spiders, and as a young man, he dared the journey into the mysterious Web Wood, a place filled with mysterious beings, to meet the mysterious Widow of the Web because he really just wanted to know more about spiders. Impressed by him, she used her magical abilities to give him all the powers of the Spider Kingdom with one condition attached. He could never use the powers for his own interest. Now, these powers weren't really too much to write home about considering spiders don't have too much going on for them. He really just gained extra limbs and web generating abilities. Not long after, his uncle was in trouble and the boy ended up using his powers to save him, which really angered the widow, causing her to curse the boy. From that day forward, he lived out his life as a monstrous looking spider-human hybrid. Deciding to isolate himself from society, the boy took up the name Webslinger and became the guardian of Webwood. However, despite all the good he does as Webslinger, he is still seen as no better than the criminals he fights due to his monstrous appearance. Give his story a read for yourself in 2000's Avatar Covenant of the Shield number 2. Number 3, we have Spider-Man Noir. Raised by his Aunt May and Uncle Ben during the Great Depression, this Peter was raised to believe that good could triumph over evil no matter what. Now, gaining his powers after an antique spider statue breaks open and he is bit by a horde of spiders, he awakens the next day with these arachnid-like abilities, such as being able to shoot organic webs from his wrists, spider senses, and of course the signature superhuman abilities of every Spider-Man. Equipped with his signature Spider-Man Noir suit modeled after his uncle's World War I airman uniform, Peter stealthily moves about in the shadows, taking down baddies with his spider powers and revolvers. This Peter is pretty interesting because in the beginning of his career, he seemed to have no problem killing villains, killing the Vulture before he could murder his Aunt May. But later on, he seemed to grow conscious and instead relied more on his powers than on his firepower. As a member of the Superior Spider Army, we saw him stationed on Earth 928, and he was a fairly key member of the war until he was very badly injured by Bricks and Bora, and had to kinda sit the rest of it out and do whatever he could from behind the scenes. Outside of that storyline, we have seen him fight the likes of his Earth's Norman Osborn and the Chameleon, and we even got to see him in the animated movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where he was voiced by Nicolas Cage. Now, if you're wondering why I included him on this list today since he doesn't really have a dark attitude to the world, here's why. My reasoning is because he literally grew up during the Great Depression, one of the darkest times in human history, and had to deal with some pretty dark subject matter while fighting the urge to succumb to it. So, I highly recommend you check out Spider-Man Noir for yourself in his first appearance in 2009's Spider-Man Noir number 1. Coming in at number 2, we have Last Stand Spider-Man. Now, this version of Spider-Man is a possible future Peter Parker that we get to see thanks to Madam Web. In this future, Peter kills Kraven the Hunter to avenge the deaths of Kane and Maddie Franklin, and this sort of flips some switch in Peter because from that point on, he was much darker and deadlier. Adopting a new costume and title as an anti-hero, this version of Spider-Man is kicked out of the Avengers for good and winds up hurting his loved ones so badly, leaving him all alone with no one to worry about. All of his quote-unquote heroic deeds do eventually catch the attention of the police, and he goes on the run as a fugitive. Years later, as an old man, Peter visited his Aunt Aunt May's grave, aware that his younger self was actually hiding in the shadows watching his every move. Peter was confronted by the NYPD, and though he was given the choice to surrender and admit to his crimes, he refused and fought against them until he was shot down and killed. Now, I know we've talked about darker versions of Peter that are okay with killing and whatnot, but what sets Last Stand apart is that he seems he eventually realized what he was doing was probably not the best, and he felt the only way to atone for his sins was to actually die. Now, I highly recommend you check the story out for yourself because it is a great read, so head on over to 2003's Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 58. And finally, number 1, we have Peter Parker, Earth 8351. Known as Assassin Spider-Man, this universe's Peter Parker becomes an assassin working alongside Wolverine, leaving basically all aspects of his old life behind, including his longtime girlfriend Mary Jane. This Spider-Man is the complete inverse of his 616 counterpart. We later find out during the events of Edge of the Spider-Verse that Peter left his old life behind to protect his loved ones, as he states that with great power comes great responsibility and even greater enemies. Shown to be always serious, lacking his signature quips and jokey demeanor in battle, likely because he has no problem coping with the situation like his mainstream counterpart, this Spidey has shown no qualms about killing and does whatever it takes to get the job done. Now, this is likely due to his friendship with Wolverine, having adapted to his personality to better fit their job style. Having received formal training to hone his skills, this Peter possesses highly refined versions of the Spidey powers we all know and love. The most impressive being his spider senses, which is honed so much that he just seems to know things, even to the point that he knows what's going on before his opponent could think about it. So, beating him is nearly impossible to do thanks to this precognition. He's also a master at hand-to-hand combat, able to defeat Black Widow with ease, and a master marksman, able to use any gun he gets his hands on. Added as a member of the Superior Spider-Man's Superior Spider Army, he alongside the other Spider-Men of the multiverse take on Karn. However, he is unfortunately defeated by the likes of Deimos' clone. Appearing for the first time in 2008's What If Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, why not check this cold webhead out for yourself? Number 10, Symbiote Spider-Man. Obviously, we have to start off this list with a classic. Introduced in 1989's What If Volume 2 number 4, we're given a glimpse into the life of Earth 1089's Peter Parker after his suit bonded with the Venom symbiote. In this reality, the symbiote couldn't be removed from Peter Parker, even though the Fantastic Four and other heroes tried using a combination of magic and science. It ended up taking over Peter's mind and body, feeding off his adrenaline, causing him to age at a very rapid rate. Once his body couldn't sustain the symbiote any longer, it used him to possess superheroes like Hulk and even caused the death of a few others. Free from the symbiote's control, it's then revealed that Peter Parker has now aged to 85 with not a whole lot of time left. He was later found dead by Mr. Fantastic, surrounded by research on how to kill the symbiote that he was once bonded to. Although it was out of his control, Symbiote Spider-Man was considered even worse than Venom, one of the most sadistic villains in the Marvel Universe, and unfortunately he never really got that redemption. Number 9, Peter Parker, Earth 9591. Now, we're all familiar with the origin story of Peter Parker. Spider bite leads to powers, leads to the birth of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But have you ever wondered what it would look like if things took a bit of a different turn after that spider bite? Well, wonder no longer, because in 1995's Ruin number 2, we're actually introduced to a different Peter Parker who isn't so lucky. After being bitten by the radioactive spider, Peter develops a total of 0 powers and is instead infected with a mutant virus that ultimately leads to his death. This Earth never gets the chance to meet the hero Spider-Man, and instead they're given a rash and scar-covered Peter Parker who was forced to live the remainder of his life in quarantine so he wouldn't infect anyone else. I always wondered what would happen realistically after that spider bite, but man, I really didn't think it would be that dark. Number 8, Ghost Spider. Now, this is one of my favorite costumes in the Spider-Man PS4 game, so I had to add it to the list. On Earth 11,638, Peter's Uncle Ben wasn't ever murdered and actually helped him hone his skills as the Amazing Spider. Despite this, he doesn't always use his abilities and intellect for good, and thanks to the resources from his lab, Parker Technologies, the Amazing Spider found a way to bring over other Spider-Men from different universes and absorb their powers. After bringing Earth 616 Peter Parker into his universe, the Spider is convinced by him that what he's been doing isn't heroic at all. Then, when Ben is about to absorb Earth 616 Peter's powers, we see the Spider stand in the way and instead had his powers absorbed, putting his body into a comatose state and trapping his spirit in hell. Following the Sorcerer Supreme's fight with the Infernal Hulk, we see Peter given a second chance at life after he was infused with the spirits and powers of the Repentant Damned. Now possessing powers similar to Ghost Rider along with his Spidey powers, he awakes from his coma as the Ghost Spider and uses his second chance to correct some of the mistakes he's made already. Check him out in his first appearance in 2011's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 38. Number 7, Superior Spider-Man. Following an insane life that deserves a read if you're not familiar with it already, Otto Octavius transplanted his mind into the body of Peter Parker, leaving Peter in his body. Still retaining Peter's memories, he was able to trick all of Peter's loved ones into thinking nothing was wrong. Otto believed that he could be a better Spider-Man and, following the death of Peter Parker, took up the role as the superior Spider-Man, upgrading the spider suit to better fit his needs. Many battles ensued, and then it's revealed along the way that Peter's consciousness still lived on inside his body, and after the Goblin King kidnapped Anna Maria, Otto's love interest while in Peter's body, Otto begins to hesitate to save others as he has a chance to save her and doubts he can save everyone without having time to plan. Peter's consciousness pushes him to save the child who is also in danger at the same time, and Otto realizes that Peter is more deserving of the role of Spider-Man and completely erases his consciousness so that Peter can take control of his body once more and save everyone. He sacrificed himself for the girl he loved and the man he hated for the greater good, and that just goes to show you that even if you start off as a villain, you can change and become a hero. Now there's a lot more to the story that I had to gloss over or skip, so I highly recommend you check out the story for yourself, starting with The Amazing Spider-Man number 697. Number 6. Doppelganger. The evil, pretty much mindless duplicate of Spider-Man from Earth 616, this version of Spider-Man was created by Magus during the Infinity War. Although he was killed during the Infinity War, this 6-armed Spidey clone was later revived by the Demogoblin, becoming its pet for a while. Doppelganger appears a few more times after the aftermath of the Infinity War, teaming up with Carnage, Shriek, Carrion, and the Demogoblin during the infamous Maximum Carnage killing spree, and then is later seen as part of the Spider Army to help defeat Morlun and the other inheritors. Unfortunately for him, after many adventures, the Doppelganger was eventually captured and imprisoned in the rebuilt Ravencroft. Possessing many of the same powers as the original Spider-Man, what really sets Doppelganger apart is his raw strength. Being able to lift up to 25 tons as opposed to the normal 10 that most other Spider heroes can lift. Why not check him out for yourself in Infinity War number 1. Number 5. Pestilence. In 2005's Cable and Deadpool number 15, we see Deadpool dropped in Earth 5701, while on a search for Cable where the supervillain Apocalypse has conquered New York and then changed 4 superheroes into his horsemen, one being the Spider-Man of this world. Alongside Famine, who's the Blob, Death, who is Archangel, and an alternate Cable known as War, they all serve under Apocalypse and aim to protect him at all costs. Now known as Pestilence, this 4-armed and 4-legged version of Spider-Man is not one you want to get close to, especially when you learn about his poisonous fangs and his hunger for human bones. Check him out for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 4. The Other. In the 2005-2006 storyline of the same title, we see Spider-Man begin a transformation to his wild side. Peter began having these strange symptoms and dreams of Uncle Ben and spiders. Thinking he might be dying, Peter threw himself more and more into his crime fighting, especially against the scientific vampire known as Morlun. As Morlun wreaked havoc by beating Spider-Man so badly that he ended up in the hospital, and also by smacking Mary Jane around, Peter got to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore and reached his limits. In 2006 Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 3, we see Spider-Man pin Morlun down and kill him with a bite to the head. After what we all assume was Peter's death, we see Peter erupt from a cocoon with new powers and a newfound dedication to embracing his spider side that he refers to as the Other. Even though he embraced his dark side for a while, he does eventually come back to his senses and becomes the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man once more. Number 3. Patton Parnell. Definitely one of the scariest looking Spider-Men, Patton Parnell has been described as a sociopathic version of Spider-Man who made the exact opposite decisions that Peter had. Growing up with an abusive uncle, Uncle Ted, Parnell was always a bit of a weird one as he found joy in experimenting on animals and perversely spying on his next door neighbor Sarah Jane. Like other Spider-Men, Patton was bit by a spider, however, his body's reaction to it was a little bit different. Instead of turning into a superhero, he actually gained the ability to turn into a spider-like monster and started to seek revenge on those who had treated him poorly, starting with his uncle. He eventually leads Sarah Jane to his house and reveals his new form to her, and needless to say, she was terrified and not at all impressed. And then after a bite to the neck, the next morning we see hundreds of baby spiders coming out of Sarah Jane's neck. Thankfully, Parnell doesn't stick around for too long, as just after 3 days of having his power, he is drained of all his life force by Morlun. Check out this twisted story in 2014's Edge of Spider-Verse number 4. Number 2. The Spider. Showcased in the Exile series, we're introduced to one of the darkest Spider-Men to date. On Earth 15, Peter Parker was a sociopathic mass murderer who was sentenced to 67 consecutive life sentences and merged with the Carnage symbiote before being recruited by the Timebreakers into the Weapon X team. Using none of his powers for good, the Spider joined the other members of the team to try to conquer the Earth instead of actually helping them, finding nothing but joy in killing and torturing. It took a blast from Firestar to end his reign of terror alongside the other rebels. What makes this version of Spider-Man so terrifying is that he's one of the few Spideys who actually keeps the symbiote his entire career. With the symbiote's powers combined with Peter's evil rage, this puts the Spider at the same power level as Carnage at his strongest point, making him a truly frightening foe. Why not check him out for yourself in 2002's Exiles number 12 so you can see just how truly merciless this killer is. Number 1. Zombie Spider-Man. Now, not a whole lot is known about Earth 2149 Peter Parker's life before the zombie apocalypse, but it's presumed that it was similar to his 616 counterpart. On his search for the Necronomicon, the presumed source of the zombie infection, Peter ends up getting bit by Colonel America, who is a zombie at the time, and becomes infected. With his mind still relatively human, he hurries home to try and get his Aunt May and Mary Jane to safety. However, with the virus spreading quickly through his body, he winds up killing and eating them both. Alongside the other superpowered zombies, they ate almost all life on Earth until they ate Galactus, which granted them all the powers of the Power Cosmic, which they used to travel the universe, eating other worlds in their endless search for more food. After 40 years of eating worlds, they finally returned to Earth, still hungry to find Reed Richards' dimensional portal so they could finally continue their quest. However, Spidey noticed that his hunger was completely gone. Regaining his sense of justice, Spidey alongside some other good zombies found themselves locked in a battle with the other zombie heroes, trying their very hardest to convince them that their hunger was also gone and they could become heroes once again. Now, there is a whole lot more to the story of Spider-Man, and I could honestly talk about it for hours. This entire zombie universe is amazing. So if you're interested in hearing the rest of the Spidey's redemption story, why not let me know in the comments below and maybe we'll dedicate an entire video to it. If you want to read the story for yourself, why not check it out in Ultimate Fantastic Four number 22 and Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness number 1. Number 10. Captain Last. You'll learn pretty early on in this list today that the Captain America legacy isn't always carried on by the most deserving. Sometimes it's taken up by a terrible warlord, and that is exactly what happened in this case. On Earth 13,153, humanity makes its last stand in the only place strong enough to survive: Brooklyn. The former Spider-Man Miles Morales leads the last of civilization into the future against the evil that is still very prevalent in the world. Captain Last is the leader of the One America Army, a group of militant scrappers based in the tri-state area following the Earth's decimation by the germs. Basing himself off of Captain America, Last also gains his powers from a super soldier serum, though it's not really explained when or how, and he wears a costume that resembles Cap's signature look, shield and all. Last and his army attacked a caravan carrying supplies from Jersey City to Brooklyn, but were defeated by Spider-Man and his allies. Somehow they were able to find a way to merge Captain Last with a germ, allowing them to break through Brooklyn's defenses and evade the city. Captain Last sought out and battled Spider-Man, but Miles used his powers of bioelectricity to kill the Captain once and for all. Check out this monstrous Captain for yourself in his first and thankfully last appearance in 2020's Miles Morales: The End number 1. Number 9. Captain Zealandia. A Captain America alternate hailing from Earth 616, Captain Zealandia is one of Arnim Zola's mutated clones of Captain America that was exposed to negatively charged gamma rays. Captain Zealandia possesses all the powers you associate with Captain America, such as superhuman strength, stamina, and agility, but they are all amped up a notch thanks to the gamma rays that they were exposed to. They also carry around a shield that resembles Captain America's, however it is a different color scheme, is made of an unknown material, and has sharpened edges that make it look kind of like a buzzsaw. This storyline takes place after Steve's return from Dimension 7, a world of mutates created by Zola where Steve had been trapped for 11 years. This storyline takes place after Steve's return from Dimension Z, a world of mutates created by Zola where Steve had been trapped for 11 years. Steve is awoken and tortured both mentally and physically by Captain Zealandia, so much so that Steve gets to a point where he's had enough and just impales Captain Zealandia with a shield. This didn't actually get rid of our Cap variant though, because he later resurfaces as the leader of the Unvengers, a team of mutated clones based on the Avengers including Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor. Check out this scary looking Cap clone for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Captain America Volume 7 number 4. Number 8. Captain Mexica. From Earth 1519, a reality where the Aztecs had never been conquered, comes a Captain America variant that is pretty freaking scary looking. Not a whole lot is known about Captain Mexica's background, but it is assumed that it's similar to Earth 616's Captain America because they seemingly have the same powers and similar gear. At some point, Captain Mexica found their way to Earth 616 and they were immediately caught and put in stasis by the Alternate Reality Monitoring and Operational Response Agency, or ARMOR for short. After a zombie Morbius was found to be impersonating his mainstream counterpart, he began infecting ARMOR agents left and right, turning them all into zombies. In this process, Captain Mexica was freed from stasis, infected, and began feasting on ARMOR agents as an ever-hungry zombie. After having his fill, he attacked Machine Man, who cut him in half, seemingly killing him. However, it was not confirmed, since he's a zombie and hasn't really made an appearance since. Give this zombie captain story a read for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2009's Marvel Zombies 3 number 4. Number 7. Steven Rogers, Earth 70,105. In the 5-issue limited series Bullet Points, we are shown an alternate reality where Dr. Erskine is killed the day before implementing the Captain America program. Still very sick and with no other option, Steve volunteered himself for another top secret government project known as Project Iron Man, and I think you know what that means. Steve's body is bonded to a giant suit of armor that resembles the Mark I Iron Man suit, and with this suit he is able to fight for America in World War II. Thanks to this new outer shell, he is able to simulate the powers and abilities that his 616 counterpart gained from the Super Soldier Serum. However, I feel this was a huge sacrifice because his skin was literally grafted to the suit. Years later, he was finally freed from the suit, but that did not last very long because he was forced back into it in order to fight Peter Parker, the Hulk of this universe. Bruce Banner is actually the Spider-Man in this universe. It's a really interesting and smart switch that the writers did, and I really liked it a lot. But anyways, sadly in this fight with Peter, Steve dies because of the sheer strength that the Hulk possesses. Highly recommend you give the storyline a read for yourself, starting with 2007's Bullet Points number 1. Number 6, Baron Blood. You're probably familiar with John Falsworth, the Baron Blood of Earth 616. You know, the young adult who got turned into a vampire by Dracula himself, and then had his body mutated and altered by German scientists? Good, I'm glad you know who he is because that is not at all who I'm going to be talking about. I am actually talking about Earth 8101's Baron Blood that hails from the Marvel Apes universe. Don't worry though, this Baron still possesses all of the powers and abilities of his 616 counterpart, and he is also said to be at the peak of gorilla physicality. Revealed to be the one who is responsible for the vampire invaders, he ambushed Captain America, took his form, froze him in an iceberg. Continuing to turn other inhabitants of this universe into zombies, he became the leader of the Ape Vengers, which, funnily enough, contained a lot of reformed supervillains. He secretly plotted to enter Earth 616 for further food, and to accomplish this, he killed his world's version of Mr. Fantastic to gain access to tech that would allow him to hop between worlds. During the final battle between the Ape Vengers and the Outcast, Baron Blood wounded Speedball, which forced Gibbon and Fiona to take Speedball with them to Earth 616. However, Baron Blood didn't end up making it too far because he was later killed by Ape X. Check out the Ape Vengers and the Marvel Apes universe for yourself by checking out 2008's Marvel Apes number 1. Number 5, US Agent. A huge shakeup for Cap came up in a bold 1987 storyline. When a government commission declared that Steve had to do their bidding to continue as Captain America, Steve was obviously resistant because, who says his ideals are necessarily going to line up with theirs? He decided to just quit the whole role altogether, and the commission turned to John Walker to become the new Cap. However, he was much more brutal and short-tempered than our lovable Steve Rogers. Thanks to his power broker enhancements, Walker possesses basically all the same abilities that Steve has, not to mention he is a military-trained fighter and also trained under the Taskmaster at one point to hone his gymnastic and acrobatic skills. A real breaking point for this character is when a group known as the Watchdogs took out his parents, causing Walker to experience extreme levels of grief and to go on a bloody rampage. These bad actions led him to being deemed unworthy of the Captain America name, and he soon after faked his own death and came back as the US Agent. As the US Agent, we have seen Walker as a member of the Dark Avengers, Omega Flight, Jury, and even the Watchdogs as an undercover agent. There is so much more when it comes to this character, so go check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance as the Super Patriot in 1986's Captain America number 323, or just feel free to skip ahead to his time as the US Agent, starting with 1989's Captain America number 354. Number 4, Captain Hydra. You're probably thinking that I'm going to be talking about the time where it was revealed that Captain America was actually an agent for Hydra and the entire fandom just lost their mind when they saw the infamous Hail Hydra panel. Now, I thought it would be way too easy to include that dark version of Captain America and challenged myself to look for some other variants, but don't worry, if we do a part 2, I will definitely include him in that list. Enough with that tangent though, let's get back on track with Leopold Zola of Earth 85,826. Possessing the exact same powers and abilities of his 616 counterpart, aka Nomad, this version of Zola differs from him because he is a spoiled and arrogant brat who does literally whatever he wants. The Captain led Hydra's team of Avengers to capture Nomad and Captain America's daughter Ellie in order to end the remnants of the rebel movement which was resisting Hydra's rule in the domain of the Hydra Empire. He pulled no punches when doing this, killing anyone who got in his way, and even broke Nomad's spine during a one-on-one fight between the two. Check out Leopold Zola for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2015's Hail Hydra number 1. Number 3, Anti-Cap. With a name like Anti-Cap, you know this guy is going to be pretty dark. Not a whole lot is known about Anti-Cap, but according to his files, we know that he was enlisted in the Navy after the Oklahoma City bombing. He almost became a SEAL, but didn't pass the psychological test, and as a US Marine, he killed one of the biggest drug dealers around. But that's about it. At some point during his time in the Navy, he agreed to undergo an experiment that would basically make him the Navy's version of Captain America through something called the AVX patch. It worked and gave him similar abilities to Captain America, but only worsened his mental state, leading him to murder an admiral that was overseeing the project. He went AWOL after that, and Captain America and the Falcon were tasked with finding him before he could cause any more damage. After a long search, Captain America found Anti-Cap, and the two battled it out for a while, with Steve coming out on top. Defeated both physically and mentally, Anti-Cap chose to take his own life into his own hands and dropped in front of a moving subway train, ending his own life. Why not check this character out for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2004's Captain America and the Falcon #1. Number 2, Colonel America, aka Zombie Cap. Now I know you're all expecting this one to pop up on this list at some point. Like most of the other heroes from Earth 2149, very little is known about Colonel America's life before the zombie plague, but it can be safely assumed that it is similar to his 616 counterpart, with the only difference being an obvious rank change and the fact that Colonel America served as the President of the United States for almost a full term. During a battle with Sentry, Colonel America was infected with the zombie virus, and he is actually the one responsible for turning Spider-Man after he launched himself into the air and biting him. With an insatiable hunger, Colonel and the rest of the Avengers go on a hunger-fueled rampage. Skip ahead a little bit and we see Rogers alongside other zombies gain cosmic powers after devouring the Silver Surfer, but even the cosmic powers he gained couldn't prevent his death because during a fight with the Red Skull, he just straight up gets his brain scooped out. Fast forward another 40 years and we find out that the Colonel's brain is still very much alive thanks to the zombie virus, and it ends up being transplanted into Black Panther's dead son T'Challa. However, this turned out to be a terrible idea because Colonel America turned into a battle-crazed zombie that couldn't think of anything other than fighting and killing. His final fate was never actually confirmed, but it can be assumed that he died in one of the later battles that ensued between the zombies and the humans. Now, the Zombieverse is probably my favorite Marvel universe out there, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it too, so check out Colonel America in his first appearance in 2007's Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness #1, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 1, Steve Rogers, Earth 11,326. Still the leader of the Avengers even in this universe, this Steve Rogers is not the nice guy that we would expect, or at least he doesn't start out that way. With all of the powers and abilities of his 616 counterpart, Captain America of Earth 11,326 was recruited as a part of a team to hunt and kill all mutants. During a mission to the mutant stronghold Fortress X, he succumbed to a deep and primal bloodlust and just killed Mystique because he thought that she was a threat, only to find out she was actually protecting a group of mutant children from the dangers of the world. With her dying breath, she completely changes Cap's outlook on life by questioning if what he was doing was actually right and how he could have let himself go this far. Realizing his mistake, Cap called off the mission and took everything into his own hands, killing the Steel Corps in order to protect the mutant children from any more horrors. Alongside the other members of the Avengers, Cap fought to protect Fortress X but was killed by the Hulk. He redeemed himself in the eyes of the mutants enough to inspire them to continue the fight in his honor though. Now I put this Captain America at the top of this list today because it shows just how truly merciless a Captain America who has lost his values and humanity can be. Check him out for yourself in the Age of X storyline starting with 2011's Age of X Universe #1.
Number 10, Old King Phoenix Thor. So some people say that this would probably be the most powerful version of Thor. And oh boy, it's probably true. Imagine Thor with his own powers, but also the power of the Phoenix Force. That's when you get Old King Phoenix Thor, who just also looks really, really cool. This Thor is a lot older and wiser, but ends up getting defeated by Wolverine, who was harnessing the power of the Phoenix Force. But then Wolverine ends up getting killed by Dr. Doom, and it is given to Thor. And I mean, the rest is history. Number 9, Rogue Thor. Okay, so this version of Thor comes from Marvel's What If series. Something a lot of fans will become a lot more familiar with because they're making a Disney Plus series about it, with MCU characters, which will actually be really cool. So, this one tells the story about what if Rogue, the X-Men, had the powers of Thor. In the story, Rogue ends up killing Thor by absorbing his powers and then kind of goes evil. I mean, she goes on a killing spree, killing a lot of people. It's not all bad though. She doesn't stay evil forever. I mean, the spirit of Thor eventually convinces her to use her powers for good, and she does. But come on, she went crazy, and it happened, but just not in the main continuity, of course, because that would just be really, really dark. Number 8, Frost Giant Thor. Okay, so Frost Giant Thor comes from Marvel's What If series, and during it, it presents the idea of what would have happened if Odin got killed by Laufey and raised Thor himself. Loki and Thor still are not really close in this version, but Loki's kind of the good guy. He wants to leave and go to Earth, but Thor doesn't want that and tries to stop him, and he accidentally ends up killing his mother, Frigga. Thor is devastated by what he's done and ends up letting Loki go, and Loki lives a nice life on Earth. I mean, it's pretty dark for Thor, but at least Loki got a happy ending this time. Number 7, Hellbound Thor. Hellbound Thor isn't from Marvel's main Earth. He comes from Earth 5113, or also known as the Dormammu-verse, which is named after, yes, Dormammu from Doctor Strange. In this universe, Dormammu is the ruler and has turned Thor, plus a lot of other famous Marvel heroes, into his minions, who will do anything for him. They all have new looks, and this version of Thor is very, very different. He's like really straight up scary. Yeah, he wasn't a big part of this story, so there's not a lot of information about him. But look-wise, he has his classic suit, but with a demon face, but he has all of his normal powers. Number 6, Thorion. Sometimes Marvel and DC cross over. It happens, and one time they did, some of their heroes merged together. This was the case with Thor and Orion, to form Thorion. He was super powerful, and get this, he is the son of Thanoside. That's Thanos and Darkseid merged together. Like, that's so cool, and it's probably the scariest villain combo you could ever have. But this isn't technically canon, it's in its own universe, but it was pretty cool to see. It's always a treat whenever Marvel and DC decide to work together. Hopefully we see more of it in the future. Number 5, Revenger Thor. Yeah, it's called the Revengers because I'm getting revenge and you're getting revenge. Do you want revenge? Okay, so that quote was from Thor Ragnarok, but that version of the Revengers doesn't have any connections to Revenger Thor. But I just wanted to put that quote in there because, yeah, it was fun. Alrighty, so Revenger Thor comes from an alternate universe, Earth 10011, also known as the Cancerverse. In that universe, Thor is part of a team called the Revengers. And as you guessed, they are evil. They are basically the evil counterparts of the Avengers, which is kind of cool. They end up getting defeated by Thanos, which is also pretty crazy since they usually end up defeating him. But in this version, or this universe, Thanos is the hero, and he saves the day. 4, Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill, a character that is very popular with fans and long overdue for a live-action appearance. Beta Ray Bill is a character that is very popular with fans and long overdue for a live-action appearance. If you're not familiar, Beta Ray Bill is an alien who was able to pick up Thor's hammer. No one was expecting it to happen, but it happened. He didn't keep it, obviously, but he did end up getting his own cool hammer. The whole thing started when Nick Fury sent Thor up to investigate a spaceship, and he ran into Beta Ray Bill, and the two of them were like, hey, fight. But during that fight, he picked up Thor's hammer. Now, he was teased in Thor Ragnarok, so maybe that means that the MCU is slowly leading up to an appearance? I mean, only time will tell, guys. Number 3, Zombie Thor. Need I say more? No. Number 2. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, Zombie Thor comes from the Marvel Zombie series, which was written by Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman. It takes place on Earth 2149, and on that Earth, a zombie virus ends up infecting almost all the heroes and villains of the Marvel universe. Thor is one of those heroes. So he looked very cool and terrifying at the same time. But one of the most interesting things about this version is that since he was technically dead, he was no longer worthy of Mjolnir. So Zombie Thor didn't have it. He ended up getting his own hammer later on, but he didn't have Mjolnir, and that was something that I thought was very, very interesting. Number 2, Venom Thor. Yep, this one is real, like no joke. Venom Thor. Man, just the name is terrifying because you know Venom Thor is a deadly combo. But like Rogue Thor and all the other ones, this one happens during one of Marvel's What If stories. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? In the story, Venom takes over Spider-Man, but then continues to take him over, and then Hulk. But of course, he doesn't stop there. He's like, maybe I should take over some more heroes. And he decides to take over Thor. Venom takes over Thor and gets all of his powers. I mean, imagine if this happened in the main continuity. Venom would be virtually unstoppable because he retains all of the powers he takes. So he would have the powers of Spider-Man, Hulk, and Thor. Who would be able to stop him? No one. He would just rule the earth forever. Number 1, Unworthy Thor. This is one of the coolest versions of Thor, like ever. The reason he is so different is because this is Thor when he is unworthy of Mjolnir. He has short hair, a massive battle axe, ripped clothes, and one arm. His other arm was chopped off by Malekith and replaced with Black Uru. This look was part of the inspiration for Thor's look in the film Thor Ragnarok, which was freaking amazing. This story really breaks Thor down and shows who he is without the hammer. Honestly, it really works, and stories like this help characters grow. And Thor, or known as son, learns a lot of valuable lessons during this arc, and becomes a better hero for it. I mean, he even fought Thanos during this comic, and it was pretty damn epic. Thor is just so cool. I can't wait to see where Marvel takes him next.
Number 10, Hellbound Thor. So, this Thor comes from Earth 5113. In this universe, also known as the Dormammu-verse. Yes, Dormammu. as in the Doctor Strange villain. In this universe, Dormammu is the ruler and has turned a lot of heroes that we know and love into his minions. That includes Thor. Seriously, Thor looks very, very scary here. He wasn't in a lot of the story, but his brief appearance was memorable enough for people to remember how creepy he was. He had his classic suit, but with a demon face and all of his normal powers. Just let that sink in. It's a demon face Thor. Creepy. Number 9, pre-banished Thor. So, okay, let me explain. So pre-banished Thor isn't scary for his look. It's more of his actions. He was a cocky guy that didn't care about anyone but himself. He started wars, killed a lot of people, let a lot of people die. Ultimately, he did pay the price for all of it, but the cool thing about that is that it forced Thor to grow as a character. He has evolved so much over the years that is really satisfying to read or, even watch in the movies. In the movies, just look at him in Thor 1 versus him in Thor Ragnarok. His journey through those movies has been amazing, and it feels like a completely different character. Even his arc in Avengers Endgame was interesting, showing that even though he's a god, he's not perfect. And even though he was sad and depressed, he was always still worthy, and I absolutely love that. Number 8, Ultimate Thor. I really just think a lot of the Ultimate Universe characters were just crazier than their original counterparts. And Thor, was really different from his original one. All the characters in the universe were just kind of like slightly exaggerated or just slightly crazier versions of themselves. I mean, Hulk ate people in the Ultimate Universe. Luckily, Thor didn't eat people, but he just still wasn't that same guy we know from the main 616 continuity. Number 7, Unworthy Thor. So this version of Thor is more of like a scary, cool kind of scary. Like, you don't want to mess with this guy. He just has that vibe. He had short hair, a massive battle axe, ripped clothes, and one arm. His one arm was chopped off by Malekith, and they replaced it with Black Uru. It made him look even just more badass. He even fought Thanos like that in one issue. And the Unworthy Thor has become a fan favorite series because it really broke Thor down and showed the man behind the hammer. Similar to what they did with him in the film Thor Ragnarok. They destroyed his hammer and showed us what Thor was like without it. He needed to realize that it wasn't the hammer giving him his power, but actually himself. Both were really cool stories. If you haven't read The Unworthy Thor, check it out, or if you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, watch it, because it's awesome. Number 6, Herald of Galactus Thor. On Earth 717, Thor became a Herald of Galactus, but he made a deal with him, which is why it happened. Galactus ended up going to Asgard, and let me tell you, it wasn't a friendly visit, and Thor quickly realizes that, and they kind of wouldn't be able to stop him. So, Thor decides to make a deal with him in order to save Asgard and the people in it. He makes a deal so that now he works for Galactus. It was an interesting story, but even though Galactus is super, super powerful, I feel like Thor would, of course, want to save everyone, but somehow he would just find a way to stop him without having to serve Galactus for eternity. I feel like that's just the Thor that I think about. Number 5, Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill has become a massive fan favorite. He was an alien that was able to pick up Thor's hammer. Of course, he didn't keep it forever and ended up getting his own, but it was a big deal when it happened and no one expected it. And it happened when Nick Fury wanted Thor to check out some kind of alien ship, so Thor went up, saw Beta Ray Bill, the two of them were like, hey, fight. But during the fight, he picked up Thor's hammer. And since then, he's amassed a really big fan base. People really like him. And they still hope that one day we will see him brought to the big screen. He was teased in Thor Ragnarok, so who knows, maybe we'll see him in the MCU. One can only hope, my friends. One can only hope. Number 4, Rogue Thor. This version of Thor comes from Marvel's What If series. It was what if Rogue possessed the power of Thor. In this comic, Rogue absorbs Thor's powers, but by doing so, she ends up killing him, and then proceeds to go on a killing spree, killing tons of heroes and basically anyone that tried to oppose her. But then the spirit of Thor ends up convincing her to use her powers for good. She does. So I guess in a way it ends up working out. I mean, it does kind of suck for Thor. He did die, and so did a lot of other people. Good thing it was a what if series, and it didn't actually happen in main continuity, because that would just be depressing. Number 3, Revenge of Thor. This Thor comes from an alternate universe, Earth 10011, also known as the Cancerverse, which we talked about earlier with Nova. Thor is part of a team called the Revengers, not to be confused with the team Thor formed in Thor Ragnarok. This one is a corrupt version that resides in the Cancerverse. They are essentially an evil version of themselves and are the exact opposite of the Avengers. And something very interesting happens in this universe. They are eventually defeated, but you will never guess who's the one to do it. Thanos. Yep. Thanos is the one that saves the world in this version by defeating the Avengers. I mean, it's pretty funny and the complete opposite of what happens in main continuity, but I mean, it was interesting to see Thanos on the other side for once. Number 2, Zombie Thor. Zombie Thor comes from the Marvel Zombie series that was written by Robert Kirkman, who of course is famous for creating The Walking Dead. On Earth 2149, a zombie virus ends up infecting almost all the heroes and villains in the Marvel Universe. Of course, one of those is none other than Thor. All of the heroes were scary as zombies, but Thor was an undead god, and a zombie god is a terrifying sight. Also, since he was dead, he was no longer worthy of his trusty hammer Mjolnir. He ended up creating another one, but I thought it was a really cool little detail and made for an even more interesting story. Number 1, Venom Thor. This one is terrifying. Like, just when you thought Venom couldn't be any scarier, he merges with Thor to create Venom Thor. Of course, this doesn't happen during the main continuity, but during one of Marvel's What If stories. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? During that story, Venom takes over Spider-Man, and then Hulk, which is equally terrifying thought, but then after that, it decides to take over Thor as well, and it's terrifying. Like seeing Venom with the hammer and have long hair, it's not a pretty sight. And Venom is super powerful because he retains all the abilities of the people that he has taken over. So he is basically unstoppable at that point.
Number 10, Captain Venom. This version of Cap first appeared in Edge of Venomverse. He comes from Earth 17084, of which we know very little. This version of Steve Rogers finds himself bonded to the Venom symbiote and becomes one of the leaders of the Resistance. The Resistance was a group of symbiotes and hosts who aimed to take down the Poisons, who were traversing through the multiverse, absorbing symbiotes into their hive. Unfortunately, Captain Venom eventually ended up being captured and assimilated by the Poisons himself. Unfortunate because he was just so terrifying and cool looking. Number 9, Skrull Captain America. This version of Cap isn't obviously really him, but a Skrull imposter. The scariest thing about this version is that no one really seemed to pick up on the fact that it wasn't Steve Rogers at all. This Skrull imposter is Pit O'Neilly and is from the Avengers. This Skrull imposter is Pit O'Neilly and is from the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated series. And in fact, Cap wasn't impersonated only once in that series by a Skrull, but twice. The Skrull took Cap's place during the Skrull invasion and would only end up being discovered by the other Avengers during their last stand against the Skrulls, when it was kinda too late. Fortunately, the real Captain America later would manage to escape imprisonment and take down the Skrull who was impersonating him. Number 8, Soldier Supreme. This alternate comes to us from the Warp World and poses the amalgamation of Dr. Stephen Strange and Captain America's Steve Rogers into one character, giving us Stephen Rogers, who signed up for the experimental super soldier project in World War II. But instead of it being a serum, the process to transform Stephen is actually revealed to be a mystical ritual, granting him both magical abilities as well as an enhanced, strengthened physiology. Number 7, Captain Apocalypse. In Age of X-Men, Apocalypse and the X-Tracks, Apocalypse and his team of mutants aim to rise up against X-Man Nate Gray's Utopia, where there is no love. They aim to teach the world to love again throughout this psychedelic short series. In issue number 4, Apocalypse Jr., his clone, who in this series is referred to actually as his son, also known as Genesis or Evan Sabanur, decides to take up the look of the champion Captain America. He even has an A on his helmet and his chest and his very own shield, with an A on it as well. Unfortunately, this look for Evan is only temporary, as he is defeated by Omega Red and returns to his original form, turning back into looking like a young little boy. Aww. Number 6, What If Age of Apocalypse. This version of Steve Rogers is the leader of the Defenders, the last standing heroic group against Apocalypse and his horsemen, who have seized control of the Earth and turned it into a wasteland of death, following the demise of both Magneto and Professor Xavier. This version of Cap looks like a tank. He is super jacked. Not that he's not normally super jacked, but he is big. He is much more determined and grim, and fights with Wolverine at his side, armed with a chipped shield and Thor's hammer, in what appears to be a scaled armor version of his suit. He just looks frightening. Also, that whole alternate world seems terrifying. Number 5, Cap Wolf. This is both a terrifying and wacky alternate for Cap, truth be told. Both scary and silly all at once, this story is. Captain America ends up investigating a town in search for his friend John Jameson after he finds out from Wolverine that there apparently is a werewolf on the loose. Thinking that his pilot and friend may be plagued with more Wolfie and Moon Gem related problems, Cap hopes to find John and figure out just what is going on. During his exploits, he discovers that the people of the town are actually being forcibly transformed into werewolves with a serum. Although I'm sure he wasn't hoping for this revelation to be as hands-on as it is, as he ends up himself being exposed and transformed. Fortunately, due to also being exposed and transformed by the super soldier serum previously, he manages to get to keep his wits about him while he's in his werewolf form, and find himself not giving in to the more feral instincts of a standard werewolf. This story can be found starting in issue 402 of Captain America, and also includes a random Cable appearance, as well as some other mutants who are also lycanthropic, like Wolfsbane, and also has more than one fight happen between Cap and Wolverine. Number 4, Iron Man. During the series Bullet Points, we get to explore a world where Dr. Erskine was killed before Steve Rogers could ever become a super soldier or Captain America. Instead, this causes Rogers to sign up for the experimental Project Iron Man, which is basically a last resort of the militaries. A project that actually was already scrapped because they didn't have a pilot for the suit. They needed someone slim enough who would actually be willing to give up a normal life in order to take on the role of Iron Man, as the pilot would have his heart literally bonded and fully connected with the suit's giant chest plate without any way to safely disconnect it. And this isn't like when Tony Stark had that small thing in his chest. This is like, it's huge. In a way, the suit actually becomes part of Steve Rogers. Fortunately, Steve, being the patriotic man that he is, he agrees, and he is transformed into the giant, indestructible World War II version of Iron Man, even choosing to sacrifice more pain meds and sedation to help the surgeons complete his operation quicker, while making it exceedingly painful for him though. Ouch. I would not want to have heart surgery without sedatives. I've had a small amount of things done to my heart, and it is not fun, let me tell you, when you are even remotely awake. Number 3, Red Skull. Okay, so in the Old Man Logan universe, Cap is admittedly nowhere to be found, as he is kinda long dead. However, his old foe, Johann Schmidt, lives on and proclaims himself president. And it's through the Red Skull of Earth 807-128, belonging to Old Man Logan, that we get to imagine another disturbing alternate version for the Captain America mantle. You see, while Red Skull doesn't really call himself Captain America or anything, he does like to walk around in his sworn enemy's blood-stained uniform and collecting trophies belonging to dead superheroes. Pretty serial killer-esque and creepy, if you ask me. Number 2, Hydra Supreme. One of the most shocking versions of Cap out there. This version was created when the Captain America of Earth 616 was altered using the Cosmic Cube to become the best version of himself, as well as to be loyal to Hydra. This created an alternate timeline where Captain America became a Hydra sleeper agent on the alternate Earth of 61311. In this reality, Steve would be placed in Hydra's care when he was just a child, after he found himself orphaned, although he would for a long time rebel and reject Hydra's attempts to indoctrinate him with their beliefs. Eventually, however, he was won over, with Zemo becoming his best friend within Hydra. During World War II, he was sent back to the United States as an undercover spy and assassin for Hydra. He would remain there undercover, feeding Hydra information and still working for them without anyone suspecting anything, until he revealed his true allegiance with Hydra in the modern day, after they had taken over the state, with Cap ruling as the new leader and new Hydra Supreme. Number 1, Zombie Cap. This version of Cap comes to us from the Marvel Zombies reality of Earth 2149. Instead of being known as Captain America in this reality, he was actually known as Colonel America. Colonel America finds himself turned into a zombie in the initial fight against the Sentry. From there, his story gets pretty crazy. It is the Zombieverse after all. He is the one responsible for infecting Spider-Man, Peter Parker, with the virus. He also helps to take down Magneto, the Silver Surfer, and Galactus. And he is one of the zombies who ends up receiving the power cosmic. He does end up defeated, however, by the horrific zombified Red Skull, who scoops out his brains. But with his brains not being consumed, as he was also undead, and the undead apparently taste terrible to zombies, he would later end up having his brains implanted in the body of Black Panther's deceased son in the future, T'Challa. Yeah, Marvel Zombies is weird. Number 10, Age of X suit. This suit looks very similar to Captain America's standard go-to, but with a few tweaks. He's got one of those super 90s small pouched belts, his suit is just blue and white, and it has blue and white camo print along the shoulders. Oh yeah, and his shield also glows. What really makes this suit scary is what it represents for this usually noble Avenger. In Age of X, the Avengers are hunting down and killing mutants due to anti-mutant legislation. This version of Cap finds and kills Mystique only to discover that she was protecting mutant children. This prompts Cap to reassess the Avengers team's orders, prompting them to change sides in the conflict and instead fight with, not against, the mutants. Phew! That's usually not how it goes though, as we've seen in many Avengers vs. X-Men. Number 9, Exoskeleton Suit. This version of Captain's suit was designed by Iron Man, and as its name implies, it's quite a bit tougher than the standard outfit. It has shiny metal gauntlets and boots, and some pretty crazy shoulder pauldrons, as well as a metal helmet that only leaves his eyes and mouth exposed. Most fans might think this suit is more cool than scary, and sure, it's definitely cool, but I do think it would be a scary suit to see headed your way were you the bad guy when Cap was chasing you down, as it's much tougher looking than the original. Number 8, Age of Ultron suit. In the Age of Ultron storyline, we see Captain America struggle to go on in a tattered version of his suit. Sure, this is similar to the classic, but just tattered, but what's really frightening here is what this suit represents for Cap. Defeat. Not something Captain America is super experienced in dealing with. Even when he was a Hydra sleeper agent, he was still remarkably successful. Not only is this suit all torn up, but his shield is also reduced to slivers after it is broken. Cap still manages to pull together a plan and a team to try and stop Ultron, of course, but as the state of his suit indicates, it doesn't end up going well for Steve. Number 7, MCU's Nomad suit. After Steve Rogers leaves the Avengers and goes into hiding following the events of Civil War, after he breaks out the heroes who are imprisoned in the raft, he gets a new look. In the comics, this look could be likened to what he wore when he was in his black suit as Nomad after he left the title of Captain America, or the suit that he wore when he was known as the Captain. Cap decided to go out on his own in the comics due to the way the government sought to control and use him. Sound familiar? Hence the name for this point. Hence why I like to refer to this MCU look as the Nomad suit, even though he's not really exactly Nomad. But still. And one of the things that makes this suit in the MCU so frightening is how capable it is. This suit came with vibranium arm shields that allowed him to hold his own momentarily alone against Thanos. The suit also represents a time when Captain America is really more of a vigilante than he ever was before. No longer working with S.H.I.E.L.D. or the military, but instead for the ideals that he believes in, which I think makes him an even more formidable foe in my opinion, should you have to come up against him in battle. Number 6, Civil Warrior. This version of Cap's suit comes from the game Marvel Contest of Champions. This alternate version of Cap actually succeeded in stopping Iron Man during the events of Civil War by killing him. To honor his fallen friend and rival, Steve Rogers uses part of Tony's Iron Man suit to create the Civil Warrior suit, which is basically like a Captain America version of the Iron Man suit, complete with its own further technologically advanced shield. This is a fearsome suit that means business, and also represents an alarming alternate reality where the Civil War ended with bloodshed and with us permanently losing that reality's Tony Stark. A frightening reality to imagine. Reality completely without Tony Stark. Kind of the MCU. Unless he comes back. We'll see what happens. Number 5, a Maridroid. I mean, the whole package really is frightening here. As well as the ginormous size of the suit and the version of Cap that is wearing it, a Maridroid is a villain known as Lyle Decker, who after having his plans foiled by Steve Rogers as Captain America and his sidekick Bucky, built himself a 12-foot tall android body. Because what else do you do when you've been defeated as a villain? He later managed to capture Captain America and infuse Cap's powers into the android body that he'd made. Decker then uploaded his consciousness into the body, making that body kind of a weird android suit for him. But also, it was kind of just him because he was in it. His mind was in it. The suit that android body wears is also that of Captain America, but of course a massive version of his suit because a 12-foot tall android body. This weird alternate version in the main continuity appears as a foe and also pops up in the miniseries Captain America Corps, where you can also find some other really cool alternates of Captain America as well. Number 4, US Agent / the Captain Suit. We can't talk about dark and spooky Captain America suits without mentioning one of the most iconic. That would of course be the suit belonging to US Agent John Walker. This suit is almost all black, save for the red and white stripes in the rectangle on the front of its chest, and its red gloves and boots. This suit relates back to another one that we touched on earlier in Cap's history when we talked about Steve's fugitive, or nomad suit as I was calling it, from the MCU. And of course the nomad suit in the comics. The history here is that after Captain America dropped his mantle, John Walker was hired by the government to replace Captain America, moving from the name Super Patriot to Captain America himself. Rogers himself, however, had moved from the name Nomad and had just adopted the name The Captain, also changing his look. While John Walker and Steve Rogers fought, eventually Walker changed sides and actually began working with Cap. When the day had been won, Rogers returned to the mantle and look of Captain America, and later on, after John Walker resurfaced, he was given the name US Agent as well as Rogers' old suit that he had worn when he was the Captain. Number 3, Iron Man suit. This suit comes to us from the alternate reality of Earth 70105, which explores a world where Dr. Erskine was killed before Rogers could be transformed into a super soldier. Instead, Steve ends up signing up for the Iron Man project, which sees him fused with a giant suit of armor. If you're wondering where you can read this story and see this suit, it can be found in the pages of the Marvel Limited Series Bullet Points. The frightening thing about this suit for Steve Rogers is that he can't get out of it. He had himself surgically fused with the suit, which was necessary in order for him to become this retro-looking version of Iron Man, and for him to become the powerful force that he was in World War II. He would eventually get removed from the suit, but would be forced to go back into it years later to fight the alternate version of the Hulk. Number 2, Age of X-Man. While this Captain America isn't really Steve Rogers, the character who does adopt the mantle and who lurks under this mask only makes this suit even more terrifying. In Age of X-Man, Apocalypse ends up becoming an alternate version of Captain America, complete with his own shield with an A on it instead of the traditional star. He looks unstoppable and even finds his own version of sidekick Bucky Barnes in his own young clone, Genesis. Number 1, Hydra's Supreme Suit. This suit is worn by the reality-warped version of Captain America, who had his history and personality altered with the Cosmic Cube, turning him into a longtime Hydra loyalist and sleeper agent. Instead of being red, white, and blue, this suit is gold and Hydra green. Cap still wears the star on his chest, but it glows in neon green, as does the star on his shield, which is not rounded in this version, but instead has 3 points with a gold metal cross on its front. More of a medieval kind of looking shield. His costume also has a few black accents, and his eyes glow green through his helmet. This suit isn't just terrifying to look at, but it's terrifying because of what it represents. A reality where Steve Rogers, aka Hydra Supreme, is unbelievably evil and frighteningly successful.
Kicking off the list at number 10, smacked by Thanos. We got to see Captain America and many others get the beatdown of their lives in Avengers Infinity War, but in the comic, in Infinity Gauntlet, it was somehow even more brutal. Yet in part 4 of Jim Starlin's The Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos at one point weakens himself while maintaining the stones because he wanted to take on the Avengers in a more equal fight. All of this just to impress Death. So he makes himself weak and then fistfights them. It's crazy. So Captain America is leading the Avengers into battle, and at this point, everybody is getting hit. Cyclops gets his head stuck in a clear block of force, Vision gets his insides just torn out, and then Thanos sees Cap as having such an emotional outburst, and then after Thanos destroys Cap's shield, he gives him the mighty backhand of a lifetime, knocking him out cold. And before we continue on to number 9, guys, if you could just go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, because it really goes a long way for us here at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Number 9, he lost Bucky. Okay, 2005 was a wild time. We got to see Jason Todd return as the Red Hood, and Marvel had their own type of super sleeper assassin come back from the dead as well, Bucky Barnes. In 2005, Bucky Barnes returned, but of course he was never the same. Near the end of World War II, Bucky and Cap were trying to disarm a bomb on a plane while taking down Baron Zemo. The bomb went off, hurling Steve and Bucky into the freezing waters, and well, as for Cap, he came out of this pretty good. He remained frozen, just hanging out, and Bucky, he didn't end up so lucky. His body fell into the freezing waters, and at the time, a Soviet spy submarine was in the area crossing the English Channel. So they scooped him up, fixed the whole left arm situation, brainwashed him, and turned him into this brutal assassin. It's heartbreaking. See, he has all these incredible abilities that make him a fierce warrior, but he doesn't remember how he got them, making him this deadly assassin and a super crazy villain to handle. This is Steve's right-hand man. Every conflict that they go through is just painful. One of the biggest turning points of Marvel was the introduction of the Winter Soldier. This was a conflict that came to life on the big screen back in 2014 with the Winter Soldier, and we're kind of still seeing Bucky try and figure this life out. With the Falcon and the Winter Soldier coming next month on Disney Plus, we can see even more of what he has to go through post-Winter Soldier times. Number 8, Hail Hydra. This next one resulted in writer Nick Spencer getting death threats. That's right, so fans were mostly not okay with this one. Back in 2016, Captain America said 2 words that would throw every comic book fan for a loop: Hail Hydra. It all went down in 2017 Secret Wars, when Captain America's reality had been rewritten secretly by Kobik, who was a sentient cosmic cube acting under the influence of the Red Skull. So as a child, Steve was recruited and raised to believe in their ideology, which was the strong ruling for the weak, for the good of all. Now there's a pleasant nod to this in Avengers Endgame, of course, when the team goes back in time to the first Avengers plot. We see Steve get in the elevator to try and get the scepter, and then we see the whole Hydra/Shield elevator stocked full of guys. Now we don't know this at the time, but that's fully Hydra. But Steve knows this. So instead of beating everybody up and kicking ass in the elevator like he did in Winter Soldier, he just said, "Hail Hydra." And then just like that, he walked out of the elevator with a smirk on his face. It was beautiful. Number 7, Old Man Cap. At the end of Avengers Endgame, now that we're talking about it, we see Captain America return the Infinity Stones. Only he doesn't shoot back to the present day after he's done. No, he sticks around, hangs out with Peggy, dances the night away, and then we see him as an old man giving the shield down to Sam Wilson just minutes later. It's a lovely end to Chris Evans' run on the character. You got a lot of feels. But in the comics, we also saw an old Captain America, but this time, it wasn't on his terms. The Iron Nail sucked all of Cap's serum out, leaving him not ripped, but also not young as well. So now Steve looked 90, and there's no way you're gonna fight at that age, let alone pick up a shield. So he would lead the Avengers and call out orders from the radio. It sounds like a pretty sweet job for us, but for Steve, he's probably like, man, this is the most boring job I've had in my entire life. Number 6. William Naslund. He was originally introduced in the comics as the Spirit of 76 in Invaders issue 14. William Naslund also held Captain America's mantle for a brief moment. This What If comic turned out to be canon, so back after the apparent death of Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes at the end of World War II, the United States approached him to be the new Captain America. The first replacement. Wow, how exciting would that be? So much pressure though. So he had the shield for a brief amount of time. He had done a couple of missions, and then he died in action. Yeah, he had to fight off these robots, and he ended up in the hands of one of them and was crushed to death. But he went down a hero. He activated a flare device that made the robot inactive, and he also summoned the other members of the All Winners to come to the rescue. So he went out a hero. Short but sweet. Number 5. William Burnside. William Burnside, who had changed his name to Steve Rogers and even got work done on his face to match the look. He ended up developing another Captain America serum, and he and his buddy Jack tried to be the new Bucky and Cap. So they got enhanced abilities and they took down Red Skull. They did some pretty good work as a team. The only thing was, a year later, things started to go a little bit south. They started to become paranoid schizophrenics, so the government put them in cryogenic suspension. He went from being Captain America to being the villain, just like that. So William and his Bucky Barnes sidekick, Jack Monroe, both were in custody of Dr. Faustus, who brainwashed William to become the Grand Director, the leader of the hate group called the National Force. Number 4. 404. Cap not found. In Captain America issue 404, we see Steve Rogers squaring up against werewolves. Yeah, what a sight to see. You heard me correctly. I said werewolves. The story known as Children of the Night runs from issue 403 to 405. And during this time, Captain America is fighting off Starksboro werewolves, and then when Nightshade tries to inject Wolverine with her wolf serum, his healing factor keeps counteracting him. So Druid mesmerized him with serums too. Then the next issue we see front and center Cap Wolf. Pretty hard to forget. So now he's a werewolf and he has faint memories of Steve Rogers. So, of course, as you would expect, it's a pretty messy good time. Number 3, Civil War. Captain America Civil War was released in 2016, directed by the Russo brothers, and the whole movie, like the comic, is superhero politics. If you're a superhero, you have to register. You can't just be out filming yourself doing super TikToks and then you end up accidentally exploding a school. It's just not gonna fly anymore. And in the movie, it's Wanda Maximoff who kickstarts the Sokovia Accords, forcing Tony to side with the government as he feels responsible for Charles Spencer, among many others' deaths. You know, with all the events that unfolded with the Age of Ultron stuff. So Steve wants to protect Bucky this whole time, and of course, freedom throughout the team is encouraged. Now, eventually, due to Baron Zemo's work, he gets Tony in the same room as Steve, and we see footage of a brainwashed Bucky kill Tony's parents. The next 10 minutes are filled with Steve having to fight off Tony in order to save his best friend. And it's truly heartbreaking, and it all ends with Steve sticking the shield in Tony's chest, and as he carries away a broken down Winter Soldier, Tony says to him the shield does not belong to him, belongs to his father. And that's the last time he sees the shield and Tony Stark, so it all goes downhill for Cap for quite a while after this point. Number 2, Stuck in Dimension Z. In the comic storyline Castaway in Dimension Z, Captain America ends up getting stuck in this land created by Arnim Zola, and he's in there for 12 years. That's some Black Mirror type torture. That's like crazy. So during the 12 years, Steve raised a boy named Ian, who's a kid he rescued from Zola as his own. So the whole thing is that Steve has to return to Earth soon before this implant on his torso that's combined with the virus of Zola's consciousness takes over his mind. Not a great scenario. Also, ouch, that doesn't look too comfortable of a procedure. It's one of the more brutal body injuries, and of course the whole being trapped for 12 years element, I mean, that just adds to this already horrible nightmare. And finally, number 1, shot by Sharon Carter. We go back now to the Civil War comic book event where Captain America was killed by his girlfriend Sharon Carter. Yeah, so after Crossbones sniped him, Agent 13, who at the time was Cap's girlfriend, delivered the final bullet from a much closer range. Well, it turns out it wasn't Sharon who was doing the work, really. The classic brainwashing made this defeat happen. Dr. Faustus. Okay, this causes a whole chain of events. I mean, for starters, Bucky decides he should then kill Iron Man after this, blaming him for the death of Steve Rogers. And then also Falcon ends up going after his own lead, he just leaves. And now Tony ended up showing Bucky the letter Cap wrote about how he should be the next Captain America. And Bucky agrees to take the spot only if he can operate solo. No government, no big brother watching, just let me do my job, move out of the way, you guys suck. To think all this came to a climax after Steve's girlfriend was the one to deliver that final blow just adds insult to injury.
Number 10, Rogers. This alternate version of Captain America resided in Earth 311, the 1602 reality, but initially came from the dystopian future reality of Earth 460, where Purple Man, aka Kilgrave, had become president for life. As such, Purple Man had seen Captain America as one of the last remaining threats to his dictatorship, and rather than make a martyr out of him through execution, he sent him back into the past, displacing the hero. Captain America took a new identity in the reality of Earth 311, adopting the name Rogers, and used his opportunity to warn the First Nations peoples of the Americas of the risk posed to their existence by the settlers who would come. As Rogers, during his time on Earth 311, Captain America helped maintain peace between the indigenous peoples of the land and the Roanoke colony settlers. In this reality, Roanoke also never disappeared due to the fact that they had Rogers there to help them survive the harsh environment of their new home. Number 9, Iron Man. The bullet points version of Steve Rogers never became a super soldier. Instead, he joins Project Iron Man during World War II, becoming the first Iron Man in history. In order to become this new mechanical hero, he has to become surgically grafted to the suit. He would then fight during World War II and later retire but be called back into action to take on the Hulk, who in this reality was Peter Parker. As in most realities, Steve, even as Iron Man, is really no match for that hulking behemoth and ends up dying in battle against him. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists like it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Age of X. This version of Captain America was kind of a villain, although it wasn't entirely his fault. He was led to believe that in order to protect the world, he and his team of Avengers would have to take out and defeat all of the mutants, which included Cap hunting down not just all kinds of mutants, but all ages of mutants as well, if you pick up what I'm putting down. This Captain America mowed down tons of mutant kind with a gun, including Mystique, who was guarding mutant children. Fortunately, Mystique with her dying breath causes Captain America to question his mission and doubt that his objective is truly noble. He decides to go against orders and instead fight alongside the mutants working to protect them. Cap dies a hero, taking on the Hulk, who decides to stick with the mission, calling Steve a traitor. Once again, another reality where it's Cap versus Hulk and Hulk just destroys Cap. Number 7. Union Soldier Steven Rogers. What if Captain America fought in the American Civil War? Well, you can bet this is the version of the hero that we would get. Steven Rogers vs 717 is the character who first appeared in the What If Captain America issue number 1 out of 2005. Here we explore just that version of Steve, who served in the American Civil War as a Union soldier. In the end, he turns against his villainous Colonel Bucky Barnes, who in this reality becomes the supervillain White Skull. In so doing, Steven becomes injured and is taken in and saved by the Eagle Chief, Wee Piak. Not only does the Eagle Chief save his life, but he also grants him extra strength, transforming him into the hero Captain America, who is armed with a mystical shield, peak human physique, and reflexes, and is rumored to be protected against all harm. This version of Captain America fights hard throughout the years to make sure the United States is a place of opportunity for all who call it their home. He truly represents the Captain America ideal of equality. Number 6. Ultimate Captain America. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Captain America is considered to be even more powerful than his 616 counterpart. The super soldier serum here didn't just prolong his life and leave him in peak human condition across the board, increasing his strength, speed, and durability, but it also gave him an accelerated healing factor and put him at a superhuman level when it came to his strength and his speed. It was once claimed that Steve Rogers of this reality could bench press a car. Across the board, this version could be considered stronger than the 616 version, although I would argue that 616 Captain America does have better leadership skills than our 1610 version. But that's just me. Number 5. Danielle Cage. Danielle Cage is the future daughter of Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. This could be who the future little 616 Danielle Cage ends up as, or maybe not. Only time will tell if Danielle ends up having a similar future to this alternate version of herself and Captain America, or not. In this reality of Earth 15061, Danielle Cage grows up to become the hero Captain America, possessing the abilities of both her father and her mother, meaning she is both super strong and super durable and can fly, all of that good stuff you've come to know and love from both Luke and Jessica's heroic power sets. As Captain America in the future, she also has inherited and wields the Captain America shield. Number 4. MCU Captain America. I mean, of course MCU Captain America has to make our cut. The Marvel Cinematic version of the character is not only extremely popular, but is also deemed worthy enough to lift Thor's hammer, giving us that awesome fight scene in Avengers Endgame where Thor and Captain America are switching back and forth, alternating between sharing and wielding Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. This ultimately gives Cap a big power boost, being able to wield Thor's weapons, especially considering that Thor is one of the most powerful members of the Avengers team, in part because of his powerful, magical, and also kinda cosmic weapons. Number 3. Carol Danvers. That's right, Carol at one point managed to become Captain America. This has actually happened in more than one reality, but for this list we're going to focus on the version of Carol Cap that comes from the Venomverse. She appears as Captain America in Venomverse War Stories and hails from the same reality as Venom Rocket, Earth 18197. In the story she appears in, Captain America Carol Danvers and Venom Rocket battle it out as Rocket is looking to cash in on a bounty for the Kree who want Carol Danvers. Venom Rocket and Captain America seem pretty evenly matched here, but in the end, Rocket does not manage to capture Carol, and Carol seemingly ends up the victor of that match, though undoubtedly left with a pretty big mess to clean up as a result of their destructive battle. Carol Danvers as Captain America still seemingly possesses some version of her Kree physiology and her 616 power set here, making her a pretty powerful alternate version of Captain America. Number 2. Super Soldier. Super Soldier hails from the Amalgam universe. Stories and characters created using the combined lore of DC Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains and Marvel Comics' main roster of superheroes and villains. Super Soldier himself is an alternate version created by combining the heroes Captain America from Marvel and Superman from DC. Clark Kent ended up in the Super Soldier program during World War II, which used alien DNA taken from a corpse that was discovered to alter Clark Kent permanently, granting him superhuman powers. He is the combined power set of both Cap and Supes, making him pretty crazy powerful, although he also comes with his own highly dangerous villain as well, the Green Skull, and his own weakness to the ore known as Green K. So keep in mind, he does have that weakness. Number 1. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is what you get when you combine the mystical powerhouse of Doctor Strange with the all-American war hero Captain America. The result is a character who happens to be tough, strong, fast, and a gifted fighter, while also possessing tons of mystical knowledge and abilities. Soldier Supreme hails from Warp World, the reality created by Gamora when she folded the universe in half using the power of the Infinity Stones. Here, Steve Rogers participated in the Super Soldier program, which was really a front for something less scientific and more magical in nature. Conducting a series of rituals, Dr. Morgan Erskine transformed Steven Rogers into the Soldier Supreme.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Old King Thor. Coming from Earth 14412, Old King Thor refers to himself as an older version of our Earth 616 Thor. So much so that if our Earth's Thor dies, he will also not exist anymore at all. Love it, we love future stress. Making his debut in Thor God of Thunder issue 1 in 2012, and this version is a creator version of the god. It's fun. In the future, Thor becomes a bit hasty. It shows a lot of his true potential, especially when he creates humans for this new Earth, named Steve and Jane. Classic human names. After defeating Gore, he and his granddaughters began to rebuild this new world, starting with plant life. I feel like we're gearing up to see King Thor in the MCU. I mean, the eye patch, his weight gain, this emotional trauma, he really seems like he's going through it lately. King Thor also possesses the power of the Odin Force, which is also known as the power of the Allfather, and when wielded by Thor, of course, is called the Thor Force, or the Force. Yeah, it doesn't work. We give it a shot, we try our best. This power allows Thor to become invincible and seems to allow them to rival the powers of the strongest beings in the universe. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Here's the kicker though, if it's overused, it forces the user to enter a deep sleep to recover, and of course, making them vulnerable while doing so. I feel like this can be the plot for Thor Love and Thunder. I mean, maybe Thor has to use this power right off the hop of the film, then he enters a deep sleep, and then bam, that's where Jane Foster comes in to protect the Sleeping Beauty himself. There you go. And before we make our way to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be just splendid, because it goes a long way for us here at the studio. You guys rock. Thank you. Now back to some more God stuff. Number 9, Zombie Thor. We all know Chris Hemsworth's diet is insane in order to maintain the God of Thunder's physique. He has like 15 abs. I'm sure it's not easy, but when it comes to appetite, Marvel's Zombies doesn't hold back. Making his nasty debut in Marvel Zombies Army of Darkness in issue 1, it was a brief appearance, as you expect with the city plagued by a zombie contagion. And as far as the hammer's commitment goes, once Ultimate Reed Richards enters the chat, Thor couldn't wield Mjolnir anymore, so instead he makes a makeshift hammer, this one made of a pipe and a cinder block. Nice. It didn't last long though because, Silver Surfer's face kinda got in the way. Ouch. Number 8, Thor. Thor, but with an extra R, a little extra spice in this one, that's for sure. So Thor, this is the evil Thor of Earth 83292. So he's a bit of a dick this time around. Fair. He kills people if he believes that they don't worship him enough. I mean, a little much. Thor. We'll do Thor's Day from now on, is that fine? What if we do that, is that cool? This version is pretty dark, but I'm a fan. I mean, he really loves pies. Check it out. His journey begins in Avengers Volume 5, Issue 25. Like I said, this version's evil. He's a villain, but I have to throw him on this list because he's too badass to ignore. Sorry, not sorry. Venom Thor. Okay, this next one is absolutely insane, as you would imagine. We would stand no chance against this one. Earth 1089 is home to Venom Thor, and he made his debut back in What If Volume 2, Issue 4. Issue Thor? Issue 4. I see you, Marvel. So after killing its previous host, of course Spider-Man, the Venom symbiote made its way to Thor. Very scary. It didn't last long. Thank you, God it didn't last long. Well, rather thanks to Black Bolt for intervening. That would have been messy. The symbiote with the hammer and cape, I mean, I gotta tell you, Something about it I like. I don't know. He even has the flow too, the Venom flow. It looks wet, it looks nice, it looks ready to go. Venom Thor is real mighty with a hint of fright. He takes care of Johnny Storm, bam, super quick, and then when Captain Marvel attempts to level him, the hammer just absorbs her power and shoots her back away. If only Black Bolt didn't get in the way, it probably would have been a pretty spectacular light show. Gory, but spectacular nonetheless. Throg. The Frog of Thunder. Why, of course, everyone knows him. Simon Walterson made his comic book debut in Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers issue 1, and this version is quite noteworthy. He started off the usual way a Frog of Thunder starts, you know, a college football star at Mississippi State University. Maybe it doesn't start all the same, I don't know. After being drafted, of course, a knee injury left him unable to play anymore. Classic. And as if things couldn't get worse, he lost his wife, and then after battling depression, decided to take his pain to a witch, who connected him to the afterlife. He was able to communicate with his wife, how sweet. And then he wasn't able to pay the witch afterwards, which is not that sweet. Dine and dash on a witch? Dude, you're crazy. So the witch decides to get a little payback and turns Simon into a frog. He was soon given the name Puddle Gulp after meeting the other frogs on New York. Also, no, I'm not joking, this is all real. He comes across a small piece of Mjolnir, and then there you have it. The Frog of Thunder has risen. If you haven't seen any of Throg, it's quite riveting. I mean, riveting. Is that a Witchneer? Huh? Ultimate Thor. Starting with Ultimates issue 4, we see the Earth 1610 version begin his life on Earth in a not so pleasant way. So while exiled on Earth, he really did believe he was human. More specifically, a psychiatric nurse named Thorleif Gullman. Honestly, I feel like that name is more badass than Thor Odinson. It's kinda close. So around his 30th birthday, Thorleif began having these delusions of this Asgard place, and then he soon met his half-brother Gunnar. He introduced him to a project called the Dome. So basically in Brussels, they were trying to recreate this super soldier serum yet again, but this time they went with a magic belt of sorts. So instead of trying the whole biomechanical route, you know? The test subject, of course, being Thorleif Gullman. Gullman and Sachs. Can't include that. So he was given this badass Thor outfit, and the look was finally complete. He started these rants up again, how he was the Norse god of thunder. And after a neat MRI scan from Professor James Braddock, it was discovered that Thor wasn't making any of this up. These were memories. Their memories are real. I like this version of Thor. He doesn't agree to join the Ultimates after Fury asks until the foreign aid budget was doubled. My man negotiating. We'd love to see it. Also, Thor's magic belt was mentioned in Spider-Man Homecoming. Could this be a hint that we're gonna get some sort of crazy Thor outfit in the future? Yeah, probably. They like to do that. Thur. If you're a dog person, this next one is gonna make your day, as it made mine. Thur making his first appearance, or occurrence, nah, it's cats, damn it, in Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham issue 5. Thur is by far the cutest version of Thor. Sorry Hemsworth, you're a close second. Making his home on Arfgard, of course, he's the Dog of Thunder instead of God of Thunder. Yeah, we reversed the word. See what I did? Yeah, you got it. What's a super dog without a super pack? When it came time to taking down Dr. Octopus of Earth 50810, Thur joined the other Scavengers. Yeah, see, now you know what we're doing here. You know what it's all about. He was joined by the oh-so-loving Captain Americat, Quacksilver, and Ant. Cool. Look, we got Spider-Ham John Mulaney edition, so to say we'll see Thor on the big screen, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. We're not gonna see it, that's for sure. I'll make it myself if I have to. Let's go. It's only a matter of time. I believe. Jane Foster. I'm super excited that Taika Waititi is returning for Thor Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok was one of the most fun Marvel movies that they put out there, easy, hands down. So when they announced that Natalie Portman was returning to wield the hammer in the upcoming sequel, I was jazzed. I'm so excited to see what they do with this. I mean, once Thor becomes unworthy, Jane takes over. I mean, she's pretty close to him. She's probably got the swing down at this point, right? The tough part about her is that the more she uses the hammer and possess the powers of Thor, the worse her cancer gets. I really hope this part doesn't make it into the flick, because I feel like I would just come out depressed. So during the comic Original Sin, Nick Fury obtains the Watcher's Eye, which is a real neat tool, and he whispers in Thor's ear that Gore was right. Gore was right, by the way. So Gore, this guy, he thinks that gods cause more trouble than anything, and they're like the worst ever. It makes Thor drop his hammer, seeing as he believes that gods are not worthy. And then he's like, by the way, he's right, y'all ain't worthy. Oops. So while Thor uses Yarngord instead, which is awesome name for anything, Mjolnir needs a new helping hand, literally, and who other is worthy than Jane Foster. Now while the cancer setback is absolutely awful, Jane doesn't let it interfere with her duty. And at one point her and Freya go against Odin, Kolborsen, Frost Giants, Loki, Dark Elves. Like, she doesn't just pick up the hammer, use it a little bit, and then gets on her way. No, she's committed. Committed to the bit. Storm Thor. From Earth 904, we find in the What If the X-Men Had Stayed in Asgard series, this beautiful combination of Storm and Thor. Storm. Yeah, I'll always try. And let me tell you, there's a lot of lightning in this one. So after a few X-Men decide to stay on Asgard, Thor at this point is still trapped as a frog back on Earth. Classic Loki, making people frogs. Loki actually created another mythical hammer and gave it to Storm. Now, she did a pretty bang-up job, considering that when Thor returned, he let her become the queen of Asgard. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. Her powers alone, before getting a magical hammer, she should be running the show regardless. Let's go. And finally, number 1, Beta Ray Bill. I really think we'll get to see this one on the big screen very, very soon. It's been teased numerous times now, but who is Beta Ray Bill exactly? Why is he always the talk of the town? The main 616 universe is home to the Corbinites, and amongst them is the powerful Beta Ray Bill. Making his first appearance back in 1983 in Thor issue 337, this version of Thor is recognized widely by his hammer, and that it's actually Stormbreaker, which we finally got to see in Infinity War for the first time. It was epic, the whole arm thing with Groot. So good. I stood up. I literally stood up. Bill was the first character to lift Mjolnir besides Thor or Odin. He's a big deal. Odin actually made Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight, and after Beta Ray Bill won, he refused to kill Thor. Questioning Odin and the rules of the hammer, he asked if he can use the hammer later on in life, after he's gained wisdom and all that nice stuff. So Odin gives him his own hammer, Stormbreaker. Not a bad gift. This guy is awesome. He's a total badass. Christian Bale is rumored to play him in the MCU, so he kind of has to be a little bit of a badass, If there's a Beta Ray, is there an Alpha Ray? Yes. He actually tried to replace him at one point as the race's guardian. He is in the main continuity of Thor, so to not see him in any movies at this point is just annoying.
Number 10, Thor of the Thunders. Thor of the Thunders is also known as the man named Donnell, an old man who hails from the reality of Earth 311, the world often referred to as 1602, which was created by Neil Gaiman and Andy Kubert. Thor of the Thunders was the godlike form that Donnell took upon slamming his artifact, a wooden stick, to the ground. The Doom of this reality attempted to steal this magical artifact but was unable to do so, as he dismissed the stick, which Donnell then used to transform into his Thor form. Thor of this reality is believed to be the god of storms, thunder, lightning, and agriculture. His very existence is considered very controversial considering the time period and the power and beliefs belonging to the Catholic Church. Number 9, Thunderstrike. Eric Masterson might not be around in the comics anymore, but when he was around, he was pretty powerful. He became merged with Thor Odinson for a time, and at one point replaced him as Thor as well. Eric was considered worthy enough to wield Mjolnir, but is also known for his own specific weapon, which also inspires his superhero name of Thunderstrike, based on the Thunderstrike mace. Eric died before he could even fully comprehend all the power that the mace offered. One of the most powerful abilities it granted, though, in my opinion, was that of teleportation, allowing Eric to open up portals to anywhere he chose, even allowing him to travel to other dimensions, or possibly alternate realities. Trans-dimensional travel capabilities are always super OP to me, especially when they come from a time period where they weren't as clearly defined, meaning that they could basically be as limitless as the story required. Them's the best time for crazy powers. The times when we didn't have to define anything. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more like it, be sure to show us by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Asgardian. Billy Kaplan as Wiccan is definitely ramping up to be one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel multiverse, but before he was known as such, he went by a different name and style. When he was just starting out as a hero, Billy was a member of the Young Avengers, and inspired by Thor, took up the mantle of Asgardian, styling himself as such. The name didn't end up sticking, and only lasted for a few issues before he decided to change it to Wiccan in issue 6 of Young Avengers, which more suited his magic-based power set. However, it is important to note that Asgardians are known for being tied to magics as well, so while Billy was just starting out and the name didn't last long, in a way his magics do kind of tie him to the Asgardians, who are also sometimes known for being mystical. They are mystical, cosmic, and mythological, but it depends on the story as to which aspect is more highlighted. Billy, as Asgardian in this Thor Styles, is really only being ranked so low for his lesser ties to Thor, but power level wise at this point, he's pretty off the charts. Number 7, Groot Thor. Groot Thor is one of my favorite alternates. He appeared as one of the members of the Thor Corps on Battleworld. Other than the reality of Battleworld, we don't really know exactly where he comes from. He could even perhaps be a combination of 2 alternate characters for all we know. Anything is possible on the patchwork world of God Emperor Doom's Battleworld. Groot Thor, however, possesses the combined powers of both Thor and Groot, presumably from Earth 616, which would make him pretty crazy powerful, as both of those heroes are capable of great feats. So combine their abilities and you get one strong and capable character. Groot Thor ended up joining up with Jane Foster, who is also Thor, in the rebellion against God Emperor Doom, whom the Thor Corps originally worked for. Instead of only saying "I am Groot," he instead only speaks the phrase "I am Thor," which makes me laugh. It's great. I love Groot. He's one of my favorites. Number 6, Rune Thor. Rune Thor is one of the alternate Thors who appeared on Battleworld as a member of the Thor Corps. His fellow Thor ended up turning against him after they realized that Rune Thor had turned pretty evil and was killing all the alternate Jane Fosters and Donald Blakes that he could find. Rune Thor proved powerful enough to beat and eventually kill, as a result of his injuries, an alternate version of Beta Ray Bill, also part of the Thor Corps, who was known as Stormbreaker Ray. Rune Thor, however, would also be taken down in the end by another member of the Thor Corps who was investigating the case involving the missing persons. The Janes, the Donalds, the missing persons. Number 5, Ultimate Thor. Thunderer Thorleif, as he was known during his Battleworld days, was the one responsible for defeating Rune Thor and killing him in the end. This version of Thor initially forgot who he was, and for a while in the Ultimate line, he was just a nurse by the name of Thorleif Golman, who believed he was human. In the end, however, Thor would begin to remember Asgard, experiencing what others believed were delusions. Even readers thought he might actually be going insane, and we weren't really sure if he was really Thor or if it was all in his head, but later on it was revealed that he was in fact the real deal, the Norse god of thunder, and the real Thor in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Thor was established as one of the most powerful characters in the entire Ultimate Universe, and even when he doesn't have his innate powers, which would later be restored to him by Odin, he has his EDI biomechanical suit to back him up, which grants him abilities and attributes similar to his godlike ones. Number 4, Goddess of Thunder. Jane Foster has been known by many different heroic mantles. One, she is a doctor, which kind of makes her like an everyday hero. That's like an everyday hero mantle. And 2, she is currently a Valkyrie and was one of the last Valkyries besides, well, until the return of the Valkyries, which kind of semi-randomly happened during the King in Black event. But in between, Jane Foster was known as Thor, taking up the mantle after Thor Odinson was deemed unworthy during the original Sin event. In many ways, Jane was considered to rival Thor in power, and at times even bested him. She also took up the mantle despite having cancer in her human form, and despite the fact that transforming into Thor basically canceled out the effects of her chemo, meaning that her cancer was only getting worse and worse from her transformations. So even though it was killing her, she was like, I'm still gonna be Thor. And man, you gotta respect Jane for that. That's pretty crazy. Number 3, MCU Thor. The Thor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe became so powerful that he didn't even need to have a hammer to use his power. This is a Thor who realized the power was inside him all along in Ragnarok, and despite becoming Bro Thor in Avengers Endgame due to, well, his depression surrounding losing Asgard and then being unable to defeat Thanos, still was immensely powerful throughout that film. In fact, the Russo brothers confirmed in a post on Reddit that Bro Thor was no weaker than he was previous to this state, and he remained super powerful, but he was just going through some stuff at that time. In Avengers Infinity War, Thor was able to restart the Forge at Nidavellir with the help of Rocket, doing the unthinkable and holding the iris that focuses the neutron star within the Forge open himself, which meant he himself was hit with the star's powerful energy. Thor held the iris open long enough to ensure the top of Stormbreaker at least was forged, which when you think about it and you talk about it, it's kind of weird. But when it happened in the movie, you were like, oh, that's nice. Number 2, Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill deserves a lot of respect for just how powerful he is. So powerful, in fact, that even Odin was forced to recognize him after he bested Thor in combat. This happened back when Thor, being separated from his hammer, turned him back into Donald Blake. Remember those days? While he was separated from Mjolnir, Bill managed to get his hands on Blake's cane and summon Mjolnir's power for himself, being deemed worthy to wield it. This prompted Thor and Beta Ray Bill to battle over who should possess Mjolnir, and Beta Ray Bill was actually the victor of that fight. However, despite winning, and despite the fact that the fight was to the death, he decided to actually spare Thor's life. Odin decided to acknowledge his power, seeing how great of a warrior he was, and made him his own Asgardian weapon to wield moving forward, known as Stormbringer. Also, Scuttlebutt. I just like saying the name of that ship. Scuttlebutt. It's a good name. Number 1, King Thor. One of the most powerful alternate versions of Thor, hands down, has to be the alternate future version from Earth 14412, King Thor. This isn't just because of his power as ruler of Asgard and Allfather, a power which Thor would actually rename as the Thor Force once inherited, but this version of Thor has also bonded with and wielded the all-black Necrosword, and was also known for a time by another, more powerful name and mantle, King Phoenix. This happened after Wolverine relinquished the Phoenix Force and thereby his life to supercharge Mjolnir in helping King Thor to defeat Doom, because that's basically what he needed. He needed the Phoenix Force to do that. Never fear though, after Doom was defeated, the Phoenix Force managed to later resurrect Logan, because that's how the Phoenix Force do. So even though Logan was like, I give up my life and my power for you, Thor, he still gotta come back after.